Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer. A little late, but still here nevertheless, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 926 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again as Russia loses more ground in Kursk, and also some big fireballs are happening outside of Moscow to Putin's dismay. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And we have absolutely major news coming out of Ukraine today, as we've been able to hear that major Ukrainian counteroffensives in the area of New York and a major Ukrainian offensive within the area of Kursk have been able to gain additional ground for the Ukrainian forces, as the Russian army has now been put at a standstill within the Pokrovsk area and is still gaining absolutely no ground as we speak at this very moment. We have also been able to see additional footage today, not only from the Pokrovsk front, showing heavier firefights happening around the southern end, near to the area of Karlivka and Ukrainsk. We have also been able to see a decent amount of footage coming out of the Seversk and Severonsky forest area, as Ukrainian efforts in this area appear to be trying to weaken Russian forces in that direction. We have also been able to see some very interesting events happening within the city of Moscow, as the city has come under attack once again by the Ukrainians within the area of Zelenskyy, with a decent amount of damage being caused to a railway depot and a massive inferno being caused because of the Ukrainian attacks, most likely causing a decent amount of damage to Russia's northern railway corridor into Moscow, and probably once again limiting war production, at least within that small local area. We have also been able to hear some very interesting news coming from outside of the Middle East, where we've been able to hear that the Israelis may be preparing for more offensive actions to occur very soon onto the onto the Lebanese forces in the southern areas controlled by Hezbollah. We have a lot of news to cover tonight, a load of it. It's actually been a fairly good news day, although most of this happened just hours before all of this happened. But before we get into this, I do have to give a quick little note that if you're coming onto the stream, you're thinking, oh, I must be clicking on and there's like some sort of a delay. They've got to be, this can't be live. We actually are live. There was a little bit of a technical difficulty that happened at the very beginning of the stream. The Discord seemed to be messing up a little bit, so I shut my Discord off, and Matthew did as well. He restarted his, I restarted mine, and then for some reason, although I literally had reset the Discord 4 hours ago, Discord apparently decided to drop a major update within the last 4 hours, and so then I was stuck trying to download. Then we panicked, I clicked the stream button, and my computer bricked everything because it was trying to eat bandwidth and battle for bandwidth in between apparently what was a big Discord update and also running the live stream. So then we ended up having to shut down the first live stream and create the second one as an iteration. So that is why the stream is late. We are pretty much never late to a stream. Very sorry about that. I hope that everyone does forgive us for that, because we were trying, the computer just could not keep up with the bandwidth needed to be able to download both the Discord update and also run a live stream simultaneously, and for that reason we will now be requesting from the CIA a supercomputer to be able to run the entire stream and also download 9 million things in the background while it's running. But moving...
Man, I tell you what, that Discord's always causing problems, always causing Discord somewhere or another, and this time it hit the Windows 97.
Oh, man.
And it caused some big issues.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a little common sense, though. You don't download anything while trying to run a live stream off of a computer. So that kind of is something that we overlooked a little bit right there. We should have just waited for the Discord update to happen. But nevertheless, that is beside the point, because we have bigger things happening in the world today rather than a Discord update. We have loads and loads of news. And moving us on up into the area of Kursk, we have been able to hear of significant developments in this area today, as we were able to get video footage confirming that the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to advance within the area of Kursk and have taken another area of ground. I don't know what that music is, some kind of a piccolo or something else, and we can see Ukrainian MRAPs moving through the countryside dirt roads. The country roads aren't taking them home, but they're taking them good places, that's for sure. And with that, that's the end of that clip right there, but once again showing us some Ukrainian columns on the move. We were then able to confirm today, and this was reported and confirmed by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, that Ukrainian forces have been able to make additional gains within the Kursk region. This map is the map that Tendar has published as the area under Ukrainian control. It largely aligns with ours. The only difference is that we can't really tell if this direction is near Kromsky Bicky or not, and we also have not documented this larger area area right here that is under Ukrainian control. So we cannot confirm these two areas as being accurate, but what we can confirm is that the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense did come out today and claim that the Ukrainians were able to take this entire area within light blue. We do not know the exact details of how the Ukrainian offensive was undergone in this area to be able to take such a larger amount of ground, but it's one of the biggest single offensive advances inside of Kursk that we've seen since the opening of this offensive several weeks ago. We were also able to see the exact details of the towns that were captured, including the town of Otradnoy, Kitrovka, Pogrebi, Orlovka, Novaya Sorochina, and also Nanyov, and also the slightly northern end of Malaya Lignia. This is a pretty significant advance by the Ukrainian armed forces within this area, and it's also showing that Russian defensive forces within this direction, much like our analysis has gone in the past, may generally be weaker than other directions. We are still trying to get more information with each passing day about the conditions of all of these fronts. The Russians and the Ukrainians really are not publishing a lot of up-to-date or really reliable information on the conditions of these front lines, and also the amount of resistance the Ukrainian forces may be encountering in different areas of the front. So we are still assuming that the Kromsky-Bicky direction is probably one of the weaker ones in this area, but we're largely saying that off of anecdotal evidence and also reports of frontline advances, which seem to be happening at a faster tempo within this direction than any other. We were also able to see a really interesting clip, once again showing that the Ukrainians are taking some heavier resistance towards the Bolshoi-Soledskoye area of a Ukrainian BTR-80 that was hiding inside of a tree line and getting hit by Russian forces. And we can actually see that clip right here. And we can see the drone coming in. And we can see it impacting the lower plate. And then later on, we can see that the BTR-80 has burned down. A little unfortunate, but once again showing that the Ukrainians are taking some losses within the area. We don't believe it's incredibly high at the moment, as Russian resistance never really seems to be absolutely hammering Ukrainian forces in this area. It actually seems to be somewhat light resistance to Ukrainian armed forces in this direction, and so we are still assuming, according to the information that we have, that the damage is largely minimal to those forces within that area. We were also able to see in Kozyrevka that the Ukrainians were also blowing up some Russian mortar positions with the Korn group, you know, or whatever the Korn group does. But we could see them dropping the bomblet into the trees.
These are these freaks on leashes out here, but they've been unleashed for this attack.
Man, they said, be free, and they went, you know, something like that. But we can see them dropping the bomblets, and the damage looks to be pretty decent. We couldn't really see a lot from the cover of the trees, but we could still see a little bit of a white smoke coming out, which is confirming to us that it seems as though the damage may have been pretty decent. And once again, ground is being gained, but oddly enough, not in the direction that we were expecting. Unlike the area around the Reka Sim, it seems as though the Ukrainians are still trying to push deeper into the Kursk Oblast towards the cities of Lvov and Kurchatov. We have not seen the Ukrainians conducting any significant advances towards the direction of Glishkovo at the moment, and so for this reason, we are largely expecting that the Ukrainians may actually be focusing a lot of their efforts on expanding deeper into Russia, which I would actually have to say may not be the best idea, as this could eventually leave their western flank wide open for a counterattack, where the Russians could start to try and skirt their way along the border, and this could greatly hinder the future or the long-term Ukrainian battle plans within this region. But we'll have to wait and see if that is actually going to be the case. Maybe the Ukrainians will be able to knock out the pontoon bridges consistently enough that this area will never be that great of a threat or a danger, but that will largely have to be waited for and seen if that actually ends up being a reality, or if that's just what we're kind of seeing at this point. But we were able to see that deep inside of Russia, actually not deep inside of Russia, deep inside the city of Moscow, there was something that happened today that was actually quite interesting. Moscow is a fairly large city that is actually made up of a large amount of smaller cities that have all ended up being amalgamated or meshed together to create the Moscow metropolitan area. And the Moscow metropolitan area is actually one of the largest within the European world, with around 11 million people living within the Moscow metropolitan area. That is compared to some of the other major cities within Europe, like Paris and London, with London, I believe, being one of the largest with about 8.5 million people living within the metropolitan area. So Moscow is pretty big, even with the kind of population density that most of the city has. But one of the outskirts further north is actually Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy is a city slash suburb sort of a city that exists on the very northern area of Moscow and almost outside of its perimeter, with the A107 motorway and the A113 largely denoting the very edge of Moscow according to the metropolitan area requirement. And you can actually see that this metropolitan area is completely encircled by this ring road, and so Zelenskyy does fall technically within the Moscow metropolitan area. According to what we've seen today, somewhere around this rail yard right here, or this rail car depot, there was some sort of an attack or a strike. We're not really sure if it happened by a drone or if it was by some sort of partisan or special forces on the ground that ended up setting this place on fire, but some sort of a massive explosion came from this rail yard right around here and ended up engulfing the entire area. We have not been able to ascertain at the moment the exact kind of damage that has been caused, but we were able to see a lot of videos coming out of this area as it was a pretty big deal. It's a major fire happening on one of the major rail corridors leading into northern Moscow, and it seemed to be blazing completely out of control. And so really quickly, let me show you all this little clip right here, and you'll kind of get an idea as to the blaze. And here it is.
Damn, that's an
pretty
inferno out there.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking big. I mean, this thing is just burning to the ground. I don't even know what in the world could be catching on fire in here, and I'll explain why in a second. But whatever's in there, it is burning to the ground. Also, another interesting thing, I need to point this out to everyone, these things right here are not industrial cranes. A lot of people would be led to believe that those are actually Russian catenaries. And let me go see if I can actually pull up a Russian-style catenary to show you all. And a lot of people are going to be thinking, what in the hell is a catenary? That sounds made up. It actually is not made up. I'm trying to see if I can find y'all a good picture here of a Russian catenary. Here we go. So this is probably one of the best example pictures that I can get right here. This is actually a ER2 commuter train inside of Russia, but right above it, you can actually see pretty much the exact same catenaries that exist in that video. And that's letting us know that that is within the area of Zelenskyy or Zelenodorsk. Let me make sure that I'm saying this correctly. Yeah, it is Zelenskyy, not Zelenodorsk. So those are catenaries. Now, a catenary is actually a special kind of construction. They're different in each country, but within Russia, they assume this shape, and their entire purpose is to support all of the electrical lines that would be needed to be able to help electric locomotives run up and down the main line. A lot of the Russian rail grid is actually electrified. Electric power is usually considered cheaper and far more economical to operate long term. But beyond that, that does confirm that this video was taken pretty close to the area of the Zelenskyy rail yard, because those electric catenaries can actually be seen right here. You can actually see the shadow that they exude onto the ground, and those catenaries also extend in a form into this rail yard over here, and we're assuming that some of those may be about right here. So this fire was coming from this rail car depot. Now, why is this a big deal? It is a big deal because Russia's entire nation largely runs on the rails. Now, unlike the United States and a lot of Western countries that have a pretty robust rail freight category, but still there is a lot of other diversified ways of transportation like truck, plane, or by ship in some areas, even canal in some forms, Russia doesn't really have that kind of diversification. The Soviet Union, which largely laid out the transportation networks that all of Eastern Europe still uses, was heavily reliant and very dependent on the railroads. The railroads being the cheapest and most economical way of moving things around, and the Soviet Union wanting to cut costs anywhere they possibly could, made sure to prioritize the railroads throughout the entirety of their history. Even until the modern day, the Russian Federation still considers the railroads to be one of the most important things for their national strategy or their national imperatives for transportation. And so you don't really see a lot of development in the aviation industry, and you don't really see a lot of development in the Russian trucking industry, but the railroads keep going. The railroads are such a big part of the way Russia runs that the Russian military actually has specific brigades, not regiments, not battalions, entire brigades dedicated to railroad logistics and running Russian army trains to be able to run transport and supplies for Russian reinforcements, and not only Russian reinforcements, vital Russian supplies needed practically anywhere and everywhere that the war may be going on at this point. From what we know, the railcar depot in this area was not taking on specifically Russian army repairs. It's a general repair facility, so there probably were some Russian army locomotives or rail cars within this depot that may have ended up being destroyed, but we're also assuming that a large amount of rolling stock, not only freight in general, but also passenger cars and passenger locomotives, may have been damaged or destroyed in this fire as well, which means that the Russians may be looking at more so of a monetary loss at this point and a loss of logistical ability within this area than anything, but this isn't a death nail. There will be an issue, though, that most locomotives running through this area will probably have to sit by and wait or go to another servicing depot and be serviced there, which could end up greatly reducing the frequency of trips made along this road. That's the name that railroads give to a main line or any form of track, is the road, because it's a road that just has rails on it. That's a whole other thing that has to do with the history of the railroad, but beyond that, that's largely what we're assuming at this point. But it was a pretty significant hit from what we could tell, and there were still a lot more pictures to come out from Zelenskyy showing this massive fire that occurred. We can see another clip right here. I believe this is another clip. Actually, it's the same one. It's a duplicate. So let me move y'all over here really quickly, because I believe that we have some additional pictures. And here we go. We can actually see a downwards view, and we can see that this is around the area of the rail depot. The rail depot is right over here. It hit something actually kind of a little bit forward and south, which could be some of the buildings down here that appears to actually be building an entirely new service station or a service shed of a sort, maybe to deal with higher traffic that's being seen on this main line. But still, the fire is huge and has caused a decent amount of damage to this entire facility. So pretty interesting to see. We're going to be trying to keep an eye on tomorrow's news to see if any better pictures come out in the broad daylight of what kind of damage was actually caused at this major rail depot. But still, the Russians are probably not going to be all too happy about the damage that was caused here, because this isn't just any rail route. Let me put this out there to y'all. This is actually the rail route that runs in between Moscow and all the way from Moscow up to St. Petersburg. If there was any rail route in Russia that could not be hit, it would be this one, because it's the only main line that actually sees a heavy amount of freight and passenger traffic pretty much all the time, 24/7. It's the Russian version of the Northeastern Corridor, or, for better example, the East Coast Main Line in the United Kingdom. It is an artery of the Russian passenger and freight transport that they need, and considering that Russia largely runs on their rails, this is a pretty big hit. So we're going to be...
Also, it's a big hit because without this railway in place right here, Chris's mom won't have a train to ride, so that would be a tough one if that went out.
Well, actually, Matthew, I have to give a correction. The Russians have actually put out a statement that they're going to be using Chris's mom as the rail bed, because they say that trains have never been run better than on Chris's mom. But beyond...
Whoa, Jack.
Whoa, Jack. But anyways, moving on from that, this strike was a pretty significant one. We're not really sure to the cause. We never saw any video footage confirming that a drone hit this area, but still, a lot of people have been talking about the ability of Ukraine to strike deep into Russia with somewhat cheap and pretty efficient drones so far. But the U.S. Defense Department says that long-range Ukrainian strikes into Russia would not turn the tide of the war. Strikes like these, the United States is claiming, actually aren't changing the war one bit in their favor or against them. And a lot of people have been giving their thoughts on this idea, and it seems like a lot of people aren't really buying that. A lot of people think that that's a farce. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking? Do they think that there's any salt to those statements, or not so much?
All right, so today we heard from the U.S. Defense Department. They made the revolutionary statement and said that if Ukraine was given the ability to strike a long range into Russia by the U.S., that would not turn the tide of the war in Ukraine's favor. That was something the U.S. Defense Department said out of their own mouths. I'm not paraphrasing it, that's what they said. So what are your thoughts? 70% said, I disagree, it would work wonders to allow Ukraine to strike long range, while 15% said, I agree, it really wouldn't change very much, it wouldn't change the tide of the war, and 8% said, I really need more info on this. And honestly, I'd have to say this. It's a little bit crazy to say that if you didn't give Ukraine the ability to, strike further into Russia, that it would not turn the tide of the war. That would clearly give Ukraine an advantage they currently don't have right now. So to say that it wouldn't really make much of a difference seems a little bit wild to me. And it sounds like basically a way to justify the decision making that's currently being made of de-escalatory decision making, of not letting Ukraine strike further because we're worried about Russian escalation. So to me, I would say that the statement holds no water with me, and I disagree completely with it. It would work wonders, and it's simply because the U.S. doesn't want to anger Russia is the reason why we're not doing it. It's not that it wouldn't change anything, it's just that we're scared. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I would strongly disagree. These strikes have worked wonders. There is loads and loads and loads of actual factual empirical proof that we have had that the situation in Russia has become far more difficult and far more strenuous for the Russians to manage because of Ukrainian deep strikes into Russia. Most specifically, the best examples that we have of that we've been able to quantifiably confirm and prove with statements and video and picture evidence is the Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil facilities and Russian fuel depots. Those have been some of the most important strikes that we've ever seen Ukraine conduct inside of Russia throughout the course of the war. And to draw y'all all back on a hardcore example, I know that many of y'all were around to hear about, the Russians have been in such a bad strait for fuel, and it was such a serious problem that the Ukrainians were starting to create. America had to tell Ukraine, whoa, 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 you can't keep striking deep into Russia because it's having such a serious impact. It may start to rise the price of gas in America because the Russians are going to have to be going anywhere and everywhere that there's any gas to buy and buy it all up. And we can't deal with that right now, so y'all stop that. So that's immediately working against, and even better still, that example literally ties in a U.S. government statement right there. That's tying in that the U.S. Defense Department has no idea what they're talking about there. They have an idea of what they're talking about. This is a very, and not to say this in a political way, but this is the only way I can say it. This is a very political kind of a statement that they're making right now. I'll explain what that means in a second. Don't take that as like a conventional political thing. It's more of a political in like the abstract sense, but I'll try and explain that here in a second. To try and justify not giving them long-range weapons. Because the United States back then came out and said, whoa, this is too much of a big deal. Y'all can't do that. Y'all are having too big of an impact on Russia with these kinds of strikes. And now they're going to come out and say, actually, their strikes have no impact on anything whatsoever. That is a straight up lie. And not only that, there's a better proof that this was having a massive impact because Russia had to go to Kazakhstan and buy one of the largest importations of usable gasoline products ever seen in modern Russian history because of the deficit that the Russians were facing every single day, because they were not producing enough fuel and their country was consuming far too much. That is clearly showing that these strikes were having a very big impact. Not only in the original way, the U.S. had to tell them to stop striking the Russians because it was having too big of an impact, and also it was having such a big impact, they had to go and buy gas products from overseas. So this clearly does have a pretty significant impact. Now, the reason why I said that the Department of Defense's statement here is more of a political one. It's not one that's supposed to be supporting or condemning a political party in this country. It's a political statement because currently the United States is trying to de-escalate. Everywhere in the world, even if it doesn't really make that much sense, they are trying to de-escalate. And so for that reason, the government is now going to come out and they're going to start giving a certain kind of a spin to the story that actually, no, there's no impact at all that deep strikes into Russia would ever prove, and for that reason, we don't need to give them long-range weapons. It's a statement that is supposed to be preempting a Ukrainian request for long-range weapons that is coming around again, so that way the United States can say, we've assessed the situation, and we have decided that giving you these long-range missiles would have no impact whatsoever, and therefore, we're not giving them. That is the kind of statement that's being made, and so it's political in its motive. It's political in a sense because it's supposed to be leading all of y'all to believe, why in the world will we give Ukraine long-range weapons? Because it wouldn't even help them in the first place. The reality is that it would help them a great deal. In fact, it's a 180. It would help them way too much in America, in the American government's mindset. And so for that reason, they want to start curtailing the public opinion, really around the world, that these kinds of weapons would actually have any impact at all, so that way they can justify not giving them. I would say that
Also, by the way, as well, if long-range strikes don't make any difference whatsoever, then how come when we drew the boundary line of how far Ukraine can currently strike into Russia, because right now we still have restrictions on how far Ukraine can fire our weapons into mainland Russia. When we drew the boundary line, we just barely missed some very key strategic air bases that Russia uses to launch strategic bombers from. And Ukraine's been asking forever to be able to hit those, and they're literally right beyond the boundary of where Ukraine is allowed to hit. And that would be considered what the U.S. calls a long-range strike. That's literally just a few miles outside the boundary that Ukraine could hit. And the U.S. will not change the boundary, and they're not even willing to negotiate the boundary, from what I've heard. So, that clearly tells me that the long-range strikes would make a huge difference. Zelensky's been telling everybody that, but the U.S. simply doesn't want to go the extra step and allow that to happen, because why? We all know the answer, because Putin would get very upset with that. That would largely impede Putin's ability to launch these bomber attacks, which would cause Putin to hypothetically escalate more if he could, which is what the U.S. is scared of.
And I would have to say that's a really stupid thing to go off of for the U.S. government, because Matthew's hitting it dead on the nail right there. But that is absolutely ridiculous. The Belarusians just proved a few days ago they could shoot down Russian drones. They're an ally of the Russians, and nothing will happen. Nothing would happen if the West shot down Russian drones. And that's something that we're really scared about. So we're so scared of escalating this, we can't even shoot down drones that are violating our airspace. That is absolutely ridiculous. And to be quite honest with y'all, even if we went much farther than that, and we gave the Ukrainians long-range missiles, and these started to strike targets deep inside of Russia, even as far as Ryazan, or maybe even Saratov, or Volgograd, that would really have no impact. That would not really be escalating that much. The Russians would just end up having to suck it up and live with it. That's the reality of the situation. There is no situation where the Russians have enough ability and energy to lash out directly at the West and begin a conventional war at this point. They are entirely on the back foot. We can already see by the Ukrainian example in Kursk, most of the Russian army is inside of Ukraine right now. What in the world are we scared of escalating? Or are we scared of escalating with a country that has absolutely no fangs, no bite to its bark? Because at this point, that is what it is. I mean, if they wanted to escalate with us, they would have to de-escalate in Ukraine first to be able to get ready to fight us. And then they would lose that fight on top of that. And they know that. So what in the world are we doing? That's really a great question here.
There's actually a second option here. It could be that maybe the U.S. is scared of what Russia could do, or here's a second option that's kind of going to be somewhat unpopular with people. The U.S. might be thinking that if we allow Ukraine to do these long-range strikes and also to hit these strategic air bases where the bombers take off from, that would so greatly impede Russia's ability to fight that the war may come to a quicker end than we even wanted it to. And right now, the goal of the U.S. is to try to weaken Russia. So if they curtail the war a little bit too soon, that might not go toward U.S. interest completely. So that's another option. I'm not sure if that is the real reason why they're not doing it or not, but that is a reason, a possibility.
It is a possibility. I would have to say, though, that can't really be America's goal. Now, it can be America's goal to try and drag out the war a little bit longer, but it can't be to drag it out as long as physically possible. Because if they drag it out too long, Ukraine is also going to become so exhausted they can't cross the finish line and actually achieve the main goal that we want, which is the Russians getting kicked out of Crimea. Because not only do the Ukrainians want Crimea back, we want Ukraine to have Crimea back, so that way the Russians do not have any kind of port access or warm water port access year-round, where they can end up sailing on down into the Eastern Mediterranean and forcing us to get to the negotiating table every time something happens down there and we're trying to secure our interests in the region. So we don't want them to get too weak to the point that they can end up retaking Crimea in the end. But at the same time, we do want the Ukrainians to end up inflicting as much damage as possible on the Russians. And I would be honest, in about 3 years' time, which is about how long this has been going on, they have done that and then some. I mean, the Russians have gotten to the point they hardly have any modern main battle tanks from what we can tell. They hardly have any trained infantry. They have no experienced cadre whatsoever because they die in such large numbers. There is no experienced people left around. Everyone's always green and fresh. They haven't really learned much from this war. If anything, the Russian economy is in shambles. I mean, it's not It's not so bad they're going to be collapsing tomorrow. Not that kind of shambles, but it's in bad enough shambles that an economic recovery may take 10 to 15 years inside of Russia, and may even be further hindered by other economic calamities, especially if the Chinese went through a major depression and actually started to affect the surrounding areas that were tied into them economically. That could end up throwing Russia back into the Stone Age a second time, kind of like they are right now economically. And so for that reason, I would say that we've already seen the Ukrainians inflicted a decent amount of damage, and I believe that we should start trying to push Ukraine not just to try and prolong the war and really wear down the Russians, but to actually get what we need and end this war, so that way we can start focusing on other things in the region, like ensuring the stability of the area and also building up a bulwark that can face the Russians and the Chinese in Eastern Europe from this point forward. And also focus more so on internal things, because we can see that right now countries like France and others are starting to get a little bit shaken in confidence, in American confidence, or as the war is continuing on, because this constant de-escalatory measure that we've been taking throughout the war is really starting to lead a lot of people in our sphere to have questions about whether America really is a true leader. And we need to be able to try and end this war so that we can go back to the economic side of things, which we always lead in just for the fact that we are the largest economy in the sphere. And then people will go, you know what, it's better we all stay together, because America truly is, the breadwinner and kind of the money basket of a sort. And we all end up making money. America ends up making money. Everyone's a winner. So let's all just stick together and stay in this thing instead of splitting up and creating separate spheres like a European sphere or anything like that. That's the way I would be gaming this out at this point. Maybe the U.S. government in place currently has a different objective, but that's what I would be doing.
Well, I saw a viewer make a really good point here. I see Vivala Vita. They said maybe the USA really doesn't want to destroy the Russian forces completely. That is a real option here. And also, by the way, I'm not saying for a certainty that's what's going on here, but it does seem like the US will prevent Ukraine from going a little bit too far. Like, for example, hitting too many oil refineries. If they do that, that might cause the complete economic collapse of Russia. And we saw the US start warning Ukraine, don't do that because that's hurting the United States, and we don't want that. And then all of a sudden, Ukraine backed off the attacks on the refineries. Also, we are seeing other things, for example, not allowing long-range strikes to hit the strategic air bases. That's another thing that indicates that U.S. is really not wanting to totally have a decisive victory for Ukraine. It could be that the U.S. wants to have Ukraine basically wear down Russia while giving Ukraine the ability to attack in moderation, which isn't enough for a decisive victory, but to prolong the war. And honestly, in my opinion, I think Ukraine has the ability to do that. If the U.S. really wants to push for that and sort of keep this thing running for years, I personally think as long as the equipment and money keeps flowing to Ukraine, Ukraine will be able to keep doing that. There's nothing that prevents it. Of course, Ukraine might run into a manpower problem, but I think Russia also has the same problem, so they're kind of on a level footing with that. So it might be a long-term war that the U.S. wants to keep going for the reason of wearing down Russia. I think that might actually be probably the more likely option at this point, but I don't know it for a certainty because we're kind of guessing at that. But there are some telltale signs that indicate decisive victory is not the goal of the U.S.
Also, really quickly, I see some people saying this, and this is something I'm going to have to argue against. It's an interesting point, sure, and it would have a decent footing in most instances, but we're dealing with a very specific and special kind of an instance right now. Some people are saying that the reason why there is no escalatory measures being made is because it's getting close to election time here in America, and no one wants anything escalating because it could impact the election. Here's the problem with that. Right now, the two candidates that are running for president are not sitting presidents. The sitting president has stated that he's not going to be running for another election. So, from what I can tell, also, this is just getting into what I'm seeing, just to game this out and explain this, and we're going to explain this as neutral as possible. I'm not picking a side here. I'm just going to tell you what I see. Right now, one of the candidates, who's the vice president of the current president, is stating that their legacy is pretty much entirely different than the sitting presidents. Like, they're pretty much non-related to each other. May as well be two completely foreign entities. And so for that reason, the current sitting president could actually continue to escalate, and it would really have no effect on the vice president who's currently running as a candidate. And so you could actually see that escalatory measures could be made, and the honest reality is it probably wouldn't have that much of an impact on the domestic election, because one of the current candidates could just say, well, I'm the vice president, but his legacy and my legacy are completely different. He's escalating, I might not escalate. Who knows? They could say something like that. But that's largely kind of how it's working right now. So I don't really see the whole deal, not to get it, like, and of course we're not getting into the political side of things. I'm trying to explain how escalation could happen. Escalation is not happening because for some reason no one wants it to happen. I don't know why. It's really a hard thing to even get down to why in some situations we wouldn't want to see escalation. But nevertheless, we're not. And when I explain it like that, I'm sure many of y'all can see, well, yeah, that is a good point because you know, like we don't talk politics on this channel, but we pay attention to it a little bit. And from what I'm telling, that's largely the way things are being played out right now, is that neither candidate has anything to do with the current president, even if they're actually in their government. And so for that reason, that president can do whatever the hell they want. They could escalate to hell and back, and it really wouldn't have an impact on anything, at least from what I could tell. But anyways.
Well, unfortunately, what do you think about the idea that the U.S. might want to prolong the war to wear Russia down? I will say, right off the bat, just looking at it from a U.S. perspective, that's actually not a bad plan, because to keep Russia weak, that's actually good for the United States. That means they can't act up and start invading other countries like they've done, like with annexing Crimea. That sort of keeps them tied up in Ukraine. It keeps them weak, and they really can't do much. But at the same time, that would be wrong from a moral standpoint to put Ukraine through endless turmoil like that for many years just for our interests. That would be very self-centered for the United States to do something like that. But that could be the case. So what do you think? Is it because the U.S. is truly scared of Russian escalation? And really, at this point, I'm not really sure how much more Russia could escalate, so I'm not sure if that's really the answer. Or is it more so that USA wants to basically wear down Russia for many more years?
I would have to say, really quickly, by the way, no politics, everyone. I wasn't bringing up the current situation in the government to try and bring up like a political thing where people are saying so-and-so's great or so-and-so sucks. We don't do that on this channel. I'm just trying to explain how I'm seeing it and how I could see that escalation could happen right now if it was wanted or it was willed to happen. But nevertheless, it still isn't. That was really the point I was bringing up. I'm not trying to bring it up so that way everyone can start getting into a blood bowl down in the chat saying so-and-so's great or so-and-so sucks and this is a good thing and this is a bad thing. That's not really what that was about. And also that's not what this channel is about because we don't take political sides. I'm just explaining what we're seeing and how in the world you could end up actually escalating right now without, you know, having to affect the election if that was the concern. But beyond that, to answer Matthew's question, which is a very good one, I would say that I wouldn't really know. Because in my opinion, I would believe that trying to end this war, round it out at this point, would probably be a better way of doing things than anything, because it's been going on for 3 years. That's a pretty lengthy war. And I know a lot of people are going to be saying, well, what about Afghanistan, which lasted for 20? Afghanistan wasn't really a war in the conventional sense. It wasn't a conventional war. It was an asymmetrical war. And when we compare the casualties that were taken in Afghanistan, in killed alone, which I believe was somewhere in the 2000s or the low 3000s, and you compare that to an average day in Ukraine, that's nothing. We were there for 20 years, and we ended up taking in losses, what the Russians end up taking in losses in the number of killed in about 2 to 3 days. So there's a really big difference here in that kind of a war, which is an asymmetrical, low-intensity kind of a war, and a high-intensity conventional war, which we're seeing in Ukraine. These just naturally cannot last long because they're so exorbitant. They're all consuming of everything, manpower and supplies and equipment in levels and numbers that you just never see. Like, you never see this kind of consumption of manpower and equipment ever. That's the truth. And so you can't keep a war like this going like Afghanistan for 20 years for some reason, or like with Iraq where you invade and then occupy for about 10 years. You just can't do that. It's just too consumptive on both sides to be able to effectively do something like this. So I would say the best thing to do would be to round this thing out, because if you rounded it out, here's what would be happening. The war would end. Ukraine would hopefully, let's just say, like, it's not a perfect scenario, but it's a somewhat reasonable scenario where Ukraine gets back the Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimean peninsulas, but they still lose the Donbas. Let's just say that that's the hypothetical scenario we're in. Russia may have gotten a small amount of territory, but they are economically wasted. They are going to be screwed like that for a pretty good long while, at least over a decade. And while they're screwed like that for an entirety of a decade, the Chinese are going to be drawing them into their sphere, which is going to tie up a lot of Chinese economic activity. And instead of them being able to focus entirely on the One Belt, One Road program of trying to consolidate their power around the Indian Ocean, they're going to actually be focused a good bit on trying to build ties and strengthen their relationship with the Russian Federation so that way they can continue to get the cheap resources they need to be able to build their economy. And that means that the Chinese, not only the Russians are in a bad lurch at that point, and they're having to focus internally for maybe 10 to 15 years, the Chinese are also going to be seeing a marked decrease in the speed at which the Belt and Road program is working. So we end up getting a win-win in both categories there. The Taiwan situation would still continue on at its normal pace and tempo that we're seeing right now, so that wouldn't change, but we'd still be able to generally affect Chinese grand strategy, economic grand strategy with the One Belt, One Road program that they're trying to create within the Indian Ocean. So going off of that, that would actually be a pretty good way to work things. Not only that, if the war ended, then the United States and the rest of the European world could actually integrate Ukraine into NATO, get that moving forward, start moving U.S. bases in, and also tie Ukraine in economically either to the European Union and then eventually into NATO, so that way we can start to build up a bit of a stronger economic base within Eastern Europe and also expand our attack avenues on Russia conventionally to include Moscow and Volgograd as well, which would put the Russians in such a bad position strategically, there would really be no way for them to counter that in the conventional war going on from that point forward, because they would have to be dealing with 2 attack paths towards Moscow, 2 attack paths towards St. Petersburg, 1 attack path towards Volgograd, and at that point, if NATO forces were actually able to advance rapidly and capture or engage in battle on the outskirts of all 3 of those cities, Russia has practically been defeated within the first month or 2 of an open conventional war, and that means that the nukes will start flying. And that also means that the Russians on the diplomatic level would be on the back foot from that point forward, especially if they were trying to escalate, because the end result of Russian escalation would be a pretty swift Russian defeat because of the strategic situation in Eastern Europe. So that would be the reason why I would think that America wouldn't really want to stretch the war out, because there's a lot of strategic benefit not only in Eastern Europe but really worldwide that we would get if we were able to end this war right now and get a fairly successful outcome out of it. But who knows? Maybe the U.S. government's seeing something that I'm not seeing.
Interesting perspective. To me personally, I'm not going to drag this out too much longer, by the way. I'm going to make this quick. Me personally, I think that by the U.S. Potentially, and this is hypothetically, because this may or may not be what they're doing, but if they keep the war going for longer and they keep Ukraine in the fight and keep wearing down Russia and they keep having to rely on their allies, for example, they've had to turn to Iran a lot. They've had to turn to North Korea, which was very desperate. That was a sign of major desperation by Russia. And also, they are looking toward the Chinese as well, but it's really not known exactly how much military aid, if hardly anything, actually comes from China to Russia directly. I would assume they probably ship it through proxies like North Korea if China wants to send something. But even at that, though, it's still weakening Russia, no matter how much aid that Russia gets. From, for example, Iran, they just sent ballistic missiles to Russia. None of that matters because the economy in Russia will suffer. And I saw someone arguing today that Russia's economy hasn't suffered. In fact, it's gotten stronger. And that was insane to me. Their economy has done terribly. The ruble is highly devalued. And also their oil industry is hurting significantly. So it is having an effect, but they're going to need to put a lot more work in on the U.S. side of things to give Ukraine more power to strike long range, or otherwise they're not going to be able to decisively win the war at this rate, because the front line is becoming a bit of a stalemate, even though progress is being made here and there in some places. But overall, they have to be able to strike long range into Russia, or they're not going to make significant progress and really causing the real damage to the Russian pocketbook.
I would have to agree with that. And also, I hope we were able to address that well. We're actually going to be moving on from this point because we still have a lot more news to cover. But I hope we kind of flesh that out a little bit. Also, really quickly, I've got to say this because I see a lot of people getting kind of a little angry in the chat. I think it's still from like the political overflow that happened a little while ago, because some people were bringing up maybe the U.S. is making these decisions for a certain kind of a domestic reason, which I hope that we covered as neutrally and objectively as we possibly could and tried to explain our stance on that at the moment, on whether the U.S. could or couldn't for that reason, not picking a side or anything in that, just explaining it, which I hope that a lot of people see, because we're trying to be as objective and neutral on that as possible. But beyond that, I gotta say, the live chat's gotta calm down. I mean, nothing is extreme enough to start getting angry and screaming in all caps at each other. I just want to remind everyone here, this is just a show. This is just a live stream on YouTube, and we're just talking here. All of y'all are just talking, and we're just talking too. There's
It's
nothing.
actually gone pretty civil, to believe it or not. I've only seen like I think 3 or 4 people get really crazy. I had to ban one of them; they went berserk. But overall, though, it's actually pretty calm, surprisingly, because the topic did stray sort of around the border of politics. I'll admit that, but we don't cross the line. That's the important part: is we don't cross it. But it's actually pretty civil, like right now.
Yeah, actually, now I'm seeing it got pretty civil. But I have to make sure to make that comment here and there because everyone has to remember here, all right? This is just nothing more than a little chit-chat that we're all having. You know, Matthew and me are running a channel, and a lot of people are here right now. There's about 8.6 thousand people here. But at the end of the day, we're all just talking. Y'all are all just talking. And so there's nothing big to worry about, nothing to get angry at folks about. If you disagree on something, it's not that big of a deal. And not only that, we're all still united around the idea of trying to promote Western interests around the world and American interests at that. So, you know, we're still all on the same page. We're all on the same team. And no reason to ever get angry at each other or angry at us and y'all and us angry at y'all over anything because we're all just talking here. And there's no real impact, I think, that this channel is going to have unless if something crazy happens. But anyways, with that, I hope that does kind of cover that well. Hope that settles tensions down if there are any in the chat right now. But with that, we're now going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have outside of Kursk and outside of Moscow, because there's still a decent amount of news to cover, and we actually have to move down into the Middle East really quickly and talk about what's going on down there, or at least a little bit of an update on the tensions that are going on there. But before we get into that, I do want to say that we have some pretty interesting questions to cover. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so the timing is a little bit off tonight because of the slight delay in starting the stream, so it messed me up just a little bit. But we're jumping into our question segment here, our first one, and our first super chat of the night, a very generous donation from Jordy Farah Van Laroven, who puts in a $55 donation. And thank you very much, Jordy, for that very generous support. And he said, LSA, take a question from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, Jordy Van Ler. Oh my goodness, how the Jordy Farah Van Laroven. Thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I'm so sorry I got your name wrong, but you are actually one of our Dutch viewers. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and being one of our Dutch viewers from the LSA from around the world. And it's super cool to know that you're here with us tonight. I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because like we say time and time again, and I've got to, of course, give the obligatory statement about this tonight, this channel runs completely ad-free and sponsor-free live streams. I can actually prove that to y'all right here, right now. We do this every once in a while. I'll do it tonight. Kind of have a little bit of like a union mandate here, but y'all can see the monetization is off. And that is something that not a lot of channels do. But we do it because we want to make sure that the news is as easily accessible to anyone and everyone as possible. Whether you have YouTube Premium or not, or whether you have a channel membership or not, or anything along those lines, the stream is completely ad-free and sponsor-free. We don't make a single cent or a dime running this thing on its own. The only way that we are able to make a living doing this, and we're able to get this news out to each and every one of y'all every single night, is thanks to folks like you, Jordy, who support this channel and help us to keep this thing running. And if it was not for folks like you in the Lee Spring Army who took it upon themselves to support this channel, and no one has to, but nevertheless y'all have for almost 3 years at this point, we wouldn't have been able to keep this channel rolling for this entire time. And I gotta thank you so much once again for being a part of this channel for an incredibly long time, and not only that, taking it upon yourself like very few have, to support this channel and help it to keep on running, because the very few of y'all who do that, it make this channel possible for so many people, millions of people every single month. And so a massive shout out to you once again, a big thanks for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling, because you keep it ad-free, sponsor-free, politics free, and you keep it where the enforcers can be real. We're not having to try and appease YouTube AdSense, and we're not having to try and appease some external sponsors that want us to say certain things, or where we have to say certain things to be able to remain sponsor friendly. And so a big thanks to you once again, and we will make sure to take a live chat in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so grabbing that live chat question in honor of Jordi Ferreira van Laroven, it goes to, let's see here, it goes to Patrick, who said, is Ukraine developing their own long-range missiles?
Yes, Ukraine has been developing their own long-range missile, which is called the Hram or the Grim. Well, actually, it's called the Hrem or the Grom, not the Grim and the Hram. But beyond that, the Hrem or the Hram missile is pretty much a modified Iskander of a sort. It's not really that advanced of a missile, so we're expecting that it probably would be easily shot down a lot like an Iskander. Largely, that's why Ukraine is trying to go for Western weapons, because Western weaponry in that category is far more advanced than Ukrainian weaponry ever really will be, because there's a lot of money that goes into developing Western missiles like the Storm Shadow or the Scalp EG or the ATACMS for that matter, or the replacement for the ATACMS, which I forgot the name of at the moment, but we're coming out with a replacement at this moment. Those missiles are actually fairly advanced, especially the Storm Shadow, which I'll show you all right here. This is the British version of the Scalp EG. Really, they're both the same thing. The Storm Shadow and the Scalp EG are literally the same. It's just a difference in name. But these are, I believe, stealth or semi-stealth, which makes it very hard to pick these up on radar and impossible pretty much for conventional air defense to be able to target and intercept this missile while it's traveling to its target. So going off of that, these missiles are far more advanced than Ukraine could ever produce. And so they largely have to rely on Western countries providing them with longer range weapons for them to actually be able to have an advantage. Otherwise, they're kind of just trying to produce non-advanced weaponry very similar to the Russians in terms of technical quality and use that instead. And I know that a lot of people are going to be saying here, well, actually in the Soviet Union, Ukraine was actually the technological powerhouse. And that's true, but technological powerhouse in the Soviet Union doesn't really mean much because it's the Soviet Union. So, yeah, it was the technological powerhouse, but they were still producing equipment that was about 20 or 30 years behind what the West was producing at any given time in history. Like, for example, the T-72, or really the T-64, which was produced in Kharkiv, which was pretty decent, but it's still not as good as an Abrams, and it certainly as hell is not as good as a Challenger 2, a Leopard 2, or a Leclerc. They're just never going to get that close because it's Soviet tech. They didn't even really have computers for most of their history. In fact, Matthew, did you know this? The the Soviet computer industry was so bad that they ended up having to buy computers in a jank kind of like a third-party way through IBM. Like they would buy them in some sort of a foreign country where IBM would sell computers, and then they'd smuggle them into the Soviet Union to have any kind of usable working computer.
I'm honestly not shocked by that. I didn't know that, but name one thing that people were like, "Oh, we have to have that Soviet-made equipment. Like we have to have that because it's world class." I don't think anybody's ever said that about anything the Soviets have ever made, so I'm not shocked about the computers.
Yeah, no one said that about anything the Soviets ever made. I don't think anyone's ever gone beyond like collector's value because it's just kind of neat. Like I don't think anyone's gone, "Oh yeah, I got to get that Soviet thing." Like no, Soviet stuff just sucks. Like, yeah, Ukraine was the one who was producing like the most advanced Soviet stuff, but the most advanced Soviet stuff still sucks compared to the most advanced Western stuff. So Ukraine still kind of has to rely on the West to be able to create any kind of modern systems of any kind, or really use any kind of modern weapon systems, because they don't really have the ability to match the capacity that Western weaponry has. Is the best way to probably put that. But let me see here really quickly if I can bring up something that the Warsaw Pact or the Soviet Union made that actually was worth something. And the only thing I can think of, I'm going to pull this up.
Vodka.
Well, I think actually a lot of people would argue America makes better vodka. Funnily enough. But let's see here. I know one thing. This is the only thing I can think of. Superfest. Do you know what Superfest is, Matthew?
Let's see. It's a brand of drinking glasses.
Oh, get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here. You're just reading straight off the screen.
Yeah.
So the only thing that I think the Soviets or the Warsaw Pact made that was actually of any note and was actually something good was this. This is the only thing, and it's not even Soviet. It's from the Warsaw Pact in East Germany, but it's called Superfest, and it means strong glass. What is cool about this is that East German engineers, post World War II, had to figure out something to do about drinking ware, because there wasn't really a lot in East Germany, and there wasn't really a way for them to mass produce glass, and really no one else mass produced glass, at least really in the entirety of the Soviet Union or the Warsaw Pact. So they ended up trying to come up with a way to make glass drinking ware, but make it long lasting. And so what they did is that they ended up messing with the I think it was the molecular properties of glass, and they ended up fortifying it with a couple of additional strengthening elements, and also ended up coming up with a way to actually heat the glass to be able to create something that was a lot stronger. And so what y'all will be interested in knowing is that if you drop this glass right here, it will not break. There's a very, 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 very small chance that it'll break, because according to the tests, and these tests have been confirmed true by the modern German government, Superfast is 25 times stronger than conventional glass.
Interesting. So it's basically like an early version of like Pyrex glass or something like that. I see Earl Grey said in the live chat, a borosilicate glass or something like that.
Yeah, it's something along those lines. It didn't really catch on anywhere in the West, because the West has a thing with replaceability with glass. That's how a lot of glass companies or glass drinking ware companies make their money, is by the glass being somewhat fragile and breaking, because they're so cheap, people just buy more. And that's kind of how they continue to make their profits, is by having a return customer. But in communist East Germany, there was not going to be any return customers. So they just wanted to make sure that there was a long-lasting kind of a glass drinking ware to use. And so they came up with this. So yeah, and also, if you don't believe me, you can actually pull up videos of this thing. And you know what? I'll pull up a video of this to show y'all. These things can be dropped from pretty high heights, and they won't break. So let's see.
Oh, and also, real quick, while I see it, I see some people saying, well, the AK-47 is one thing that Russia's created that everybody has to have. No, like if you had the option between the AK or the AR, I think most countries would love to go with the AR. But if you can't afford the AR or get a hold of it, the AKs are readily available. It's really easy to make, and that's what all the ragtag groups like to get when they need to fight. But they would love the AR though over that.
Yeah, no one wants an AK. Like, Ukraine's replacing most of their AKs with CZ Brens or AR platforms, so certainly not. Like, the AK is not something that's, like, highly preferred. It's good for what it is, but it's not something that a modern advanced army would want to use. But really quickly, because I saw someone say that's cap about Superfest, I'm going to show you someone drop testing it right here. Like, no joke, people actually put videos out on YouTube drop testing these things, and they survive pretty deep, like, drops. So check this out. So here we go. Some of them will break, but generally the chances of them breaking is greatly decreased, as you can see right there.
Oh, damn. Man, I'll be worried if you drink out of that, you get like 3 Rontgens of like radiation.
Man, you might, like, you may, like, I'm just kidding. These things are actually completely safe. Funnily enough, a lot of beer halls in East Germany, well, in modern Germany, but in former East Germany, still use these. They're holdovers from East German times, because they never break. So they never have to buy new glasses to replace them.
Is this YouTube channel like one of those like tech channels, you know, how they'll drop like phones and stuff and try to bend them, but this is like a cup channel, like they drop cups for like testing?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's called DDR Design. Kind of a shout out to them. I guess they're showing off engineering from East Germany, but still pretty impressive stuff. And also someone said, it sounds like plastic. Funnily enough, it is 100% glass. There's nothing plastic in this at all. And they ended up coming up with a way molecularly to enhance the, I think it's something of like the molecular pattern, because the molecular pattern in glass is fairly erratic. And so they ended up eliminating that in Superfest and coming up with a symmetrical molecular pattern through some sort of a, I forgot what it is, some sort of a, I believe it's some sort of a process where they add an additional element to it that still keeps it transparent and keeps it as glass, but it ends up greatly fortifying the strength of the glass overall. So it is pretty cool. But that's the only thing I could say that came out of really the entirety of the Warsaw Pact and the Soviet Union that was actually neat. Like, this is the only thing that I can think of. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, on that whole side of things. But still, thank you once again for support, Jordy Faravan Larovan, and supporting that live chat from Patrick. And with that, we are now moving on to the next question.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to Colin Gunn, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Colin, for that very generous support. And I don't see any comment attached to it. But Colin is a longtime channel legend, and we appreciate you helping to keep the channel running by supporting us with a super chat. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, thank you for the massive support, Colin Gunn, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And while you didn't throw in a comment, the support does mean a lot, and it always helps us to be able to keep this channel running and keep this thing on air. Because if it wasn't for all of y'all, not only the people who support, but the people who hit the like button and are here every single night, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible time and time again, each and every day. And somehow, even with a very late start, we ended up getting up to about 9.1 thousand live viewers tonight, which is still pretty crazy. We were about 11 minutes late, and nevertheless, still 9.1 thousand people showed up. And I got to give a huge thanks to all of y'all for really having some dedication to this channel and really enjoying it so much and sticking with us even during times where it looks like we may not come on air because we're that late. But of course, before we move on to the next one, I do have to bring up something. While about 7.8 thousand people are here, so that way the word can get out, we will not be on air for that much longer. That doesn't mean we're going away permanently. I have to put that out there. We will be taking a short break on this channel where we will not be running live streams because we will be off taking a vacation. It's the first one that we've taken in 3 years. I know all of y'all have heard the spiel by this point, but I got to make sure to throw it out there just in case if anyone's here tonight that hasn't heard it before. But we are going to be taking our first vacation that we've taken in 4 years, and over the course of running this channel for 3 years, this is the first one that we're ever going to be taking. We will not be running live streams from September 14th to September 18th, and we may not be running a live stream on September 19th. We'll have to see how that day ends up unfolding. But if we are able to, you can expect a stream on the 19th, and if a stream does not run on the 19th, you can be guaranteed there will be a stream on the 20th. We will be making sure to keep the stream running 6 days a week, every single day of the week, except for that period of time. When we come back, though, we will be putting all kinds of stuff out about our vacation, where we went, what we did, if it was fun, if it wasn't fun, and everything else in between, because we know that a lot of y'all will want to hear about that, and we would love to be able to share some stuff with y'all. We may even share it during a question segment, like the day we come back, if so, but still, it will be an incredibly fun one, and I thank everyone so much for understanding. I thank everyone for always having kind words about it and really wanting us to take a vacation, because we probably worked ourselves into the ground at this point. But I still thank y'all all for always sticking with us, always enjoying this channel and the hard work we've done, and then also encouraging us to actually take a break. But we will be back. Enforcer withdrawals will only last for a few days, and then we will be back, and you won't have to worry about enforcer withdrawals because we'll be here every single day, every single night from that point forward, like we always have been. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have for tonight.
All right, and the final super chat of the segment is going to go to Rad Doctor, who's a longtime channel legend as well, and puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. And they said, I've been listening since week 1, and I read radiology studies while listening every night. And you guys are great, and thank you. And also thank you for the kind words. And they said, I never comment because I'm busy, but I listen every night. And have a great vacation, and LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, Rad Doctor. And Rad Doctor is living up to the name of being a Rad Doctor by reading radiology studies. That's pretty cool, actually. I got to say, that's incredibly neat. I hope they're interesting, radiology and all that. But still, I got to thank you so much for the support. I'm glad to know that you're staying busy, because if you love what you're doing, you're never busy a day in your life. And I hope that you love what you're doing with the whole radiology side of things. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much once again for wishing us to have a great vacation. We hope that we have a great vacation. One can only hope, because what we are doing is not tried and true. Like, a lot of people, you know, they usually have like this one thing that they do on a vacation. They're like, hey, it's that time of the year, let's go down to the beach, or let's go to the mountains or something. And this time we're doing something that we have never done before. We're actually going to a place we've never been to before. And so all of it is going to be entirely brand new. And I'm just hoping that it is actually cool and fun like we are thinking it's going to be. If it is, we probably will come up with some pretty good vacation ideas to go on in the future. If not, then we will learn, and we will not be doing that again. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much once again for that massive support and the massive thanks as well. It's good to know that you're one of our American lurkers and you're not just gone. You're actually here every night. It's just that you're busy. And I thank you once again for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, and we say this every time, but it's entirely true each and every time, if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep this thing running. And so a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are now going to be moving on out of this question segment and on into the rest of our news, moving us on down into the Middle East and into the area of northern Israel, as we were able to hear that the Israelis are apparently preparing for some offensive actions against Lebanon. The Israel army prepares for offensive actions on the Lebanese front, according to the IDF Chief of General Staff. The Northern Command, with all of the IDF's capabilities, is striking a lot of Hezbollah's capabilities in Lebanon before they can attack us, and at the same time, we're preparing for offensive moves within the arena. The IDF Chief of the General Staff, Herzi Halevi, announced today. It does seem as though they are getting ready for some kind of an action in this area. Don't expect too much. It's probably going to be some sort of an airstrike or something like that, or artillery bombardments. We're not expecting a full-scale invasion into Lebanon anytime soon. And of course, nothing happened with Iran about a week ago when someone in America said, oh, it's going to happen in 48 to 72 hours. And I said, nothing's going to happen. Nothing happened. So we're all good. It looks like nothing will be really going on in this area too much. It's just typical tensions as normal. And we don't expect it to really pop off too badly. But it's still, you know, the normal simmer that everyone sees going on down there all the time. But moving on from that and out of that area in the Middle East, because there's not really a lot to talk about there, we are actually going to be moving back up to Moscow really quickly, because there's actually a really interesting question that's been put forward to everyone. And we have heard that today Zelenskyy alluded that it is a pity that Ukraine cannot strike the Kremlin. And a lot of people have been talking about whether this was a wise statement to make or not from Zelenskyy. And it seems like a lot of y'all are on the same page. And so what are people saying, Matthew? And what are you thinking as well?
All right, so we did get footage today that Zelenskyy was out there speaking at some event, some public event. I'm not really sure what it was, but he was speaking in English, and he was actually getting pretty good at English, by the way. But he alluded to that it's a pity that Ukraine cannot strike the Kremlin. And was this a wise statement? And also, I want to give a disclaimer. He said that he was kind of saying it half-heartedly, but then he said he was kind of being serious. So I'm really not sure what he really meant by it, if he was actually joking or not. But he did say it was a pity that Ukraine cannot strike the Kremlin, which was a little bit interesting. So 57% said yes, it was actually good to say, while 19% said it really won't make any difference, and 16% said no, that only hurts Western support. And one thing y'all will remember is the U.S. has been making a very big deal about not letting Ukraine do long-range strikes because they're worried that Zelenskyy is going to strike the Kremlin. And I've always said for a long time, I said Zelenskyy would never do that because he knows that would bring about really bad consequences. But Zelenskyy joking about it, in my opinion, is not a very good idea because that is something that the U.S. is going to use to justify not letting them have the ability to strike long-range into Russia. So that's not even good to joke about, in my opinion. They shouldn't even mention that. They should keep that totally quiet. Don't make any statements on it. But I think Zelenskyy kind of stepped in it by making that statement today. So I'm actually with a 16%, and I'm actually in the minority tonight. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that in my opinion, I think that it wasn't really the best thing to say, in my opinion, because, you know, looking at it from another lens, something that Ukraine has complained about a lot is cultural genocide, which is what it's called when the Russians go after cultural sites and ends up attacking them and destroying them. And the Ukrainians have claimed time and time again that not only are the Russians trying to genocide the Ukrainian people, but they're also trying to conduct a cultural genocide against the idea of Ukraine, the culture that exists in the country. I would have to say that on a standpoint of an idea of cultural genocide, I feel like attacking the Kremlin, which is probably one of the most historic and most important historical sites within the Russian Federation, and trying to blow up part of it, probably isn't that good of an idea. That would be my opinion, because, one, the Russian government doesn't really operate out of the Kremlin. It's more so of a kind of a ceremonial center of the government, and it's not even really where Putin is most of the time. Usually the government is actually within the ministry buildings around the area, like, for example, the Ministry of Defense building, which I believe is right here, if I'm correct. Yeah, here we go. This is the Ministry of Defense building. If you actually wanted to cause some real damage, you would end up blowing up this building. You wouldn't end up blowing up the Kremlin. Because guess what? If you're going to blow up any Russian generals, and they were in a building in Moscow, they're not going to be in the Kremlin. They're going to be in the Ministry of Defense building. So if you wanted to actually hit anything and cause any real damage, you would try and hit one of these buildings. And also, they have really no historic value. They're about 70 years old, maybe 60 years old, and most of the time, they're not that old. So you could end up hitting these. No cultural genocide argument can be made. It's just that you hit that building, maybe took out some people. It is what it is. The Kremlin has really no governmental significance at all beyond the symbolism behind it. It's like saying, oh, like, let's, like the Russians saying, let's, I don't know, hit Buckingham Palace. Buckingham Palace, for the British, has, like, really no significant value at all. The royal family isn't even there most times of the year, and there are no government officials inside of Buckingham Palace, hardly at all. Like, Buckingham Palace is a symbolic center of the British government, and that's it. Like, really, like, once again, if you wanted to cause any real damage, you would end up going for an actual ministry building inside of London. You wouldn't go for Buckingham Palace. And that's kind of the argument that I'm making here. It is only furthering an argument that there is some sort of a cultural genocide trying to be conducted, and it doesn't really have any real strategic pertinence to the war effort, rather than trying to hit historic building. I'm not really a big fan of that, because while I say rules for thee and not for me when it comes to this kind of stuff, you can't really apply that to historical objects like the Kremlin, because yeah, people don't like Russia right now, that's true, but would it really be right to say for future generations down the road, not only in Russia but around the world, to say, why, yeah, people didn't really like you all the time, so they ended up blowing up one of the most important buildings in all of Russia because of that reason? It doesn't really seem like that great of an idea. That's like saying, why, America went to war with Germany, and so we decided at the end of the war, while we were occupying Berlin, to bulldoze the Reichstag, just because we didn't really like the Germans. It's one of the more historical significant buildings in Germany, but we just bulldoze it just because. It would be a little bit of a disservice to history. It's kind of like how Hitler was gathering up art in World War II and was ordering for it to be destroyed, and some of it actually was. It's like, is that really a proper service just because the Germans don't like other countries to destroy the cultural heritage and historic value that some of their greatest artworks have? It's like, that's not really fair. And so I would say, generally, I'm not really a big fan of that. Not on the whole side of the strategic thing. I'm really removing that part of the discussion entirely, in my opinion. I'm just not a big fan of it because it's destroying a culturally and historically significant building for the Russian Federation. Whether you like the Russians or not, it's not a good idea going around blowing up people's historical buildings. It just seems wrong, at least to me on a moral level, being really big into history. Not a good idea. And usually everyone will lament this in the future. I promise you that. If someone actually ended up blowing up the Kremlin clock tower right there, everyone would lament that in the future. Everyone would be going, oh, it's a shame that they got blown up in that war. It really seems like that war was something deep in the past. It didn't even have to be destroyed, but it ended up being destroyed. Or any other building in the Kremlin for that matter. Because that's how everyone does everything. That's literally how everyone does everything. Because you can go around here in the southern United States, and there are Indian burial grounds all over the South, because the Indians used to live here, and so for that reason, people will go around. They go, "Dang, isn't that a shame that they went and bulldozed those in Indian burial grounds? They built like a Walmart on top of it or something. Isn't that a shame?" It's like, it's just not a good thing to destroy historic cultural sites. Because it never ends up turning out well. Everyone ends up lamenting it in the future and saying it was a bad idea. And on top of that, much like that, people largely think, I being one of them, Native American or Indian culture, whatever you'd like to call it, it's really cool, actually. It's very interesting, especially the Native American or Indian cultures of the American Southeast. They're actually fairly interesting. And so it ends up being a great misfortune to really everyone in the future and everyone in the present to say, oh, well, the American settlers of yore didn't like the Native Americans, so they just started bulldozing everything. And now we have to live with the fact that a lot of their cultural and historical sites were destroyed in this area, and you really can't look at that part of history in this region because it's gone. It was just destroyed because a group of people at the time didn't really like it that much. So that's what I would generally have to say about that. You know, I'm just not really a big fan of attacking and destroying historic or cultural sites, regardless of who they are. You know, like if just because
I
I.
just think
Hmm?
for me personally, I would say that the Ukrainian government buildings, the main ones, should be off limits for the Russians, and generally they have been off limits. Like I'm surprised Russia really hasn't hit those. And also, I think the Kremlin should be off limits as well because hitting either one of those would bring about bad results on both sides. If Ukraine hits the Kremlin, that might provoke something very extreme like a nuclear response. I think that's a real possibility. And then if Russia hits Ukraine's main buildings, that could cause France, which is a NATO country, to send in troops and start fighting on the ground. That's also a somewhat remote possibility, but it is a possibility, and it could bring about bad results from NATO getting involved and starting a really large conflict. So either way you go, it wouldn't be good. So I think both parties ought to keep those spots off limits, just for the sake of not letting things go so out of control that it starts World War III.
I would agree with that, but also I see some people saying some things like, how about the Christians tearing down Roman monuments? Oh, you mean like the Pantheon, right? You know, like that giant basilica of a sort in Rome that wasn't torn down. I guess the Christians tore that one down, right? Or better yet, let's see here. I believe it's in Nice, France. Let me go find Nice. Let's see here. Nice in France. Let me go find it. Because I think down here, if I remember correctly, there's actually a pantheon to the gods that still exists here, and it was never torn down. I mean, yeah, right, you know, like, that must have been all of those, right? You know, or, for example, any of the Roman architecture that still exists, like the Roman Colosseums in a large amount of larger European cities, I guess those were all torn down as well, right? Or anything like that. I mean, you know, like, you can't, like you're going to go back 2,000 years to where people weren't even what we would recognize morally as people anymore, and then try and argue, well, you know, we can blow up the Kremlin. Like, I don't like the Chinese government, for one, but I'm not going to sit here and advocate for the firebombing of the Forbidden City because I don't like the Chinese government. That seems really stupid, and it's destroying cultural and historical heritage of the Chinese people for absolutely no reason at all. It doesn't further any kind of an idea or an objective. It's just it's stupid. It's like the North Koreans wanting to blow up the U.S. Capitol building. It's like, you know, if all of the Congress members and senators are still alive after that attack, destroying the Capitol building had literally no significance at all, rather than just destroying a historic structure, right? Like, you know, doesn't really matter at all. Also, Hollis Wood said, they made the Pantheon into a Christian church. Yeah, because the Roman gods kind of died off. Like, no one was really worshiping them anymore. So at that point, they said, well, no one's using this giant building. Let's just turn it into a Catholic church. Like, that was kind of the logic. Because I will say this. In the Roman Empire, you didn't really see Christians persecuting Roman pagans because they were getting persecuted most of the time, and largely they were trying to win over their favor. So you didn't really see that a lot because that wouldn't have bowed too well, and that would have really slowed down the whole gradual shift that kind of happened. That's really the reality of the history there. And I know, oh my lord, I know someone's going to come in here after I said that because I just realized it. Someone's going to say, oh yeah? Well, what about this? And I'm talking about the Roman Empire from like 100 AD to about 400 AD in the West. I'm not talking about any other historic period, so don't come whipping out any other historic period for that reason. Because it's going to be goofy to say that. It's a completely different period in time, probably a completely different group of people that were doing something entirely different. So you can't sit there and you can't try and draw the two together. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Also, now I see some people bringing up some other things. Now, a modern thing is not historically and culturally significant. Nazi monuments were not culturally or historically significant. They had been made during World War II within the past 5 to 10 years inside of Germany. So none of them were considered a keystone element of German culture, and none of them were considered historical, because they were hardly old enough to be historical. They were literally brand new, and not only that, Nazism in Germany was a fairly new concept that was also about 10 to 15 years old at that time. So there's nothing culturally significant about Nazism to the Germans. Preserving Prussian heritage, or the heritage of the multiple German city-states that formed modern Germany at that time, that would be culturally significant, like the Brandenburg Gate, like the Reichstag, or other large buildings like the Cologne Cathedral. Destroying those buildings has absolutely no logic, like at all. It just doesn't make any sense because they're culturally and historically significant. By the time that World War II was going on and the time after World War II, Nazism and Nazi Germany was not culturally or historically significant, and because it was wiped out when it literally was formed, it never ended up becoming culturally or historically significant. Although I would say historically, Nazis are actually pretty significant because no one ever stops talking about them. Like they're like the absolute crux of evil. So they are historically significant for that reason, of really setting the hallmark of what a lot of people consider to be pure evil in the form of humanity. They're not historically and culturally significant to the fabric of modern day Germany, or really Germany for that matter at all. So I hope that it does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And moving on from that, it's now time for us to get on into the rest of this news. And so moving on down into the area of Ukraine, we actually had a pretty decent amount of interesting location unknowns. We actually got to see that a Ukrainian soldier was ambushed by the Russians. I'm not going to be able to really show this clip, but I'll let y'all see at least the first part of it right here, where this guy ended up having to fall down into a bush. But if you want to see the entirety of the clip, click on the link in the description below, and y'all can go check that out there. But moving on from that, we also got to see some N113s of the 13th National Guard Brigade on the move with full cope cages and also machine gun shields to protect the machine gunners on the APCs. Pretty cool to see that, and nice to know that the M113s are getting little upgrades here and there. We also got to see the Ukrainians using a new JDAM-like bomb from an Su-24. Check this out.
This is good footage, by the way. This is very unique, the angle.
And we can see it really is cool. This is actually an Su-27 that's filming this. And we can see them here getting ready to drop the bombs.
Imagine the guy reaches down to pick a crumb up off the floor and yank right into the other one.
Yoink! Dude, that would be terrible, man. Chinks! Oh, man. But we can see them flying through a cloud. Now, that has to be kind of scary right there. Kind of losing a visual sight of the plane. And they're getting close, man. I mean, like, geez, it's almost like wingtip to wingtip right here.
I will never get over the fact that these jets right here have rear view mirrors on the cockpit like those. Like, that's just crazy to see that.
Man, you gotta have them, man. It gives you that rear visibility you have to have. And we also got to see, speaking of some kind of visibility, we got to see that the kitchens, the field kitchens, are getting a little bit more visibility. This little Conex box, or container box right here, actually is a full-service kitchen inside of it that can be moved to the front and can be used to serve Ukrainian soldiers fresh meals. Really cool. I cannot stress enough how important field kitchens, and especially modular and mobile field kitchens like these are, because warm, well-cooked meals are such a massive boost in morale. And having these, or having a large amount of them that are usable and near to the front, is very, very important for the morale of troops, like just across the board. It's historically proven as a fact. Historically proven as a fact from all of the research and studies that were done in World War I and World War II. But we also got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours as well, and it's actually pretty freaking high.
Oh, it's juicy. It's 13 Bobcats, 13 more. I love to see it. And also, we got our fair share of bots over here yapping. Someone said, yeah, I'm not buying this at all. Well, they're not selling it. It's here. It's a fact. It's not opinion. But anyways, Enforcer, tell us more.
Man, they're saying, yeah, not buying this at all. It's like, sir, this is Twitter. We don't sell anything here. It's like we just post things here. You just look at it.
You thought this was a telemarketer or something? This is the loss report.
Man, what the hell does he think this is? Some sort of a pesky bastard at the mall? It's like, this is nothing. This is a casualty report. But anyways, moving on from that, 1,170 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours. A fairly high number, along with 9 APCs, 72 supply trucks, 7 main battle tanks, 20 artillery pieces, 74 drones, 1 MLRS, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and finally, and last but not least, 13 Bobcat skid steers. Holy moly! Pretty high numbers, and wonderful to see that the Russians are taking pretty decent losses. Moving on from that and on up into the Belgrade area, we got to see that the Russians are now starting to spin things around. They're starting to steal from the local Russians. And we can see this Russian here who's angry at them and yelling at them that they actually were one of the people who supported them, waving a Russian flag as they drove across the border at the beginning of the war. And now they're back stealing from her. Look at that.
А русалки позвоним, хай сюда едут. Давайте назад носите. Квадрик, блядь, назад гони. Вы чё, блин, вообще? Мы, сука, вам помогаем, блядь, с первых дней. Вы что делаете, блядь, а? Как вам, блядь, не стыдно, сука? Он, квадрик выгнали, блядь, все повыгребали нахер. У вас что, блядь, тушенки нету, сука, голодаете или что, блядь? Бессовестные, блядь. И в хату залезли, прикинь, в хате еще повытягивали, блядь.
They snatched something from this lady.
They stole something from this lady, and she was absolutely snapping off at him about it.
Thanks, you better be careful running around yelling like that at them because they might get angry.
Man, she went up to him and she said, "Hey, must be a bunch of thieves around here," or something like that. But anyways, it's like they're Russian soldiers. I think they're thieves. But we also got to see a little bit of combat footage as well around the Vovchansk area. Whoa, that's a little loud. But we can see them here racing around in their M113s like we showed in the picture earlier. Oh, a little swerve. And we can see them now advancing even further while artillery hits ahead of them. And look at them go. I mean, they're racing here. And we can see them continuing to fire. Oh, man, look at them laying down that 50 caliber fire. Really nice. Driving through the weeds, getting ready to dismount the troops. There goes the troops. They're dismounting now. Oh, man, they're laying down heat instantly. I mean, they have no time, only heat. It's terrible lag. Oh, my goodness, great heavens. Well, we're back now, and things look to be good. Things are great. And so with that, we're getting back to the clip. John Prison said, "I need real lag, long-lasting lag." You can hear me, right, Matthew? You can hear me? We're good?
Yes, I can hear you right now. Long-lasting lag. I heard you. Long-lasting.
Good, good. We need a real lag, long-lasting lag. Oh, and they're laying down that heat. Oh, buddy! Get him!
Long-lasting, laying down the lead. Let them have some lead. This guy said, "Oh my God, they're really laying that lead down badly." Oh, the humanity.
Oh, they're going up in a great blazes. Oh, the humanity. Oh, or something like that. Man, when I watch Hot Dog Man's channel lose another 100 subs. Oh, it's going down by the rear. Oh my goodness, it's over. Oh, the humanity. Oh, just something like that.
Oh, the huge manatee.
Man, when you see Chris's mom out there on the street. Oh, the huge manatee. Oh. Oh, my goodness. When you see them continuing to give instructions to the tankers to lay down the heat. Dead on the nail. You see them loading up the artillery piece. It looks like to be a Mr. B. What's up, Mr. B? But we can see them laying down more heat right there. Laying down the 50. Oh? Who's that? Well, I think it was a Russian.
Oh, he got buried by rolling some serious coal.
They're rolling that grenade coal. Like it's like that nice dirt coal.
The hell? He just threw his rifle down?
I think so. That's interesting.
I thought you weren't supposed to do that.
Well, I guess in war all's fair, I suppose.
That guy's dedicated to dragging that bag along like he was like freaking slogging it, getting that bag up out of there.
Man, he said, "I pledge allegiance to the bag." Oh, man, but there's the end of that clip right there. Really nice to see their little battle going on around Vovchansk. And meanwhile, we actually got to see what Vovchansk is looking like these days. I'm sure it's looking... Ooh. It's been pretty much leveled.
Ooh.
The battle has ended up largely destroying most of the structures in Vovchansk. There really isn't anything that stands anymore that's taller than 2 stories, except for these buildings here, but you really can't get up to the upper floors anymore. But still, Vovchansk has pretty much been completely destroyed from all of the heavy fighting. Meanwhile, we also got to see out here on the eastern flank that the 3rd Brigade conducted a little assault in this area as well today. We hear the hum of the M113 as they all dismount.
Вперед, Демко, вперед! Давай, 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 рух! Давай, 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 давай!
Вони будуть іти альфа-браво, ми за ними. Якщо там 300, помощь, откат, пацани зроблять накат, придвинуться трохи далі, якщо по можливості, ми будемо відтягувати типів. Плюс-плюс.
Ага, то ми, коротше, троє на цьому. На тяжкі.
Все, друже.
А?
Чуть-чуть перекур і в'йо.
Oh, they're laying down heat. Get them, boys!
Look at all these guys with the ARs too. Like no AKs in sight.
Man, all ARs, no AKs. That's how you do it these days. Actually, sorry, Mandy, that is an AK. You're wrong. that was an AK. Just an AK with a really
Well, some
nice
of the people
inlock.
got ARs. I'm sure they're the favorites of the group.
I bet they're the cool guys, you know? But that's 100% an AK there. Man, I just ran with it too. I was like, yep, looks like an AR to me because it had that rail system on the front. But now it just looks like a really modded AK.
Кидаю гранату.
That's a very odd looking AK.
Простріли, простріли його нахуй! О, да. СПшка, СПшка вгорі!
Горі СП.
Давай туди нахуй!
Що, йде?
Да, давай! Га? Да, 2 СПшки!
Я крию, йди.
Oh my goodness. We do like a Christmas bomb joke, Mandy, and I feel like there's like crimes against humanity committed in the live chat afterwards by some people because they say some of the craziest things. Funny, but crazy.
І два в той, два в той.
You see them getting in a dugout here.
Типи, гази, тут гази пиздец нахуй. Спортик є. Спортик. У тебе є противогази є? Гази. Зразу в лінію вистраюємо оборону. Підери от, вони хочуть нас закрутити хочуть.
Ой, мій маленький помічник.
These guys are just laying it down. I'm telling you.
Мопс, група штурмова, вступила в контакт. Нас, сука, підер десь справа, блядь, сидить, ми туди наїбурили,
He's saying
ну, сука,
very
не можемо
choice words
вичислити
about
його,
the
як
Russians.
прийняв.
Rough translation, he said, give the beast all they have.
Спортик, рух!
Oh!
Пустив нахуй! Здохни, сука!
He sounds angry. And that's the end of that clip, but as y'all can see, the fights continue in this area. Moving on out of this direction, we also get to see a little bit further down the line that a Wild Hornet was used to hit a couple of Russian vehicles. Check this one out. This Wild Hornet, it's about to hit that Russian vehicle right there. How do we know it's Russian? Because it's running. How do we know that the Russians are scared? Because they're running. Are the Russians going to be effective? No, because it's a Buhanka. And they're about to hit it. Boom, right there. And there we go. Buhanka, no more Honka. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on even further down the lines into Kremenna, where we got to see that they were hitting some field ammo depots in the area. And they hit it right there. There's a little smoke of fire rising up from the explosion. And we can see another explosion right there. Ooh, nice. Oh, and another one. When you see another one getting hit right there. And also, also I see some people saying, Hot Dog Man was here in the chat. No, not the real Hot Dog Man. It would have had to have been a fake account if he was. Because the real one was banned after he tried to crap on us and he accidentally put in a $100 super chat to the channel. And so he put in the $100 super chat. He put his main YouTube channel account on blast, and then we accepted the 100. Actually, we didn't accept the 100. I refused the 100 and said that I would instead put the full value of it towards the Sunday fundraiser, and then we banned him. But with that, I hope that does let y'all know what happened to the Hot Dog Man's official account. But moving on from that and down towards Verkno-Kamyansky, or really the Seversk area, we got to see some Ukrainian tankers going for a ride. And listen to that sound. No music, just raw engine. Oh, he's got an American patch on. American volunteer! Or something like that. Oh, man. What a fun time out here. We have fun. But anyways, with that, that's the end of the clip. And moving on from that and into our next clip, we also get to see another tank around Seversk today, too. Check this one out. This is a T-72B3. Captured from the Russians. Used by the Ukrainians. And that's the end of that clip. Really nice to see. And moving on from that, we also got to see the day in the life of a Ukrainian tank crew. A lot was going on in Seversk today with the tanks. I don't know why, but we can see them crawling through a little opening in the wall right there. And there's their tank right there. And here they come crawling through. I guess you could say that after they have a rough night, they come crawling in the work. But anyways, to get in the tank, they start turning it on and setting it up. We now see them on the road, driving around, having a fun time out here. Aw, man, I am the hot dog man. like he's coming out and saying he's Batman or something. Oh, I'm the hot dog man. It's like, dude, that's not a good title to have. Sit down. It's like, sit down. You're not even the hot dog man anymore. You quit your job at the fair because you said it was too much to be a carny. Like, how the hell can you quit your job at the fair because you say it's too much work being a carny selling hot dogs? Like, how the hell does that actually happen? It's not even a hard job at the carnival. It literally isn't. It's like the easiest job there. You literally just pull out the pre-frozen corn dogs, heat them in a microwave, and then give them to someone for like $5 a pop. That's not even a hard job. I don't even know what the hell you'd be complaining about. But anyways, moving on down into Kurtamivka, we did get to see the 4th Brigade using a gush gun to shoot down a Shahed. Check this out. That guy was scared to get his fingers blown off. Look, he's pointing up there at the drone, and when this guy fires the gun, he flings his hand back like he got hit, although it didn't. He was like, hell, man. He's like, that's pretty rough. Ay, ay, ay.
Давай, давай!
I don't know what the thing is at the top of the screen. Apparently they hit it. They have victory music as it's going down. I really couldn't see it through the whole clip. But there it goes. It's going down right there. That was actually a pretty long-range hit. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, but really nice to see. And with that, we're now moving on down towards New York, where we were able to hear that the 12th has retaken the town of New York. This map has a lot to say, and there's really no confirmation to this. But then we got a video showing that they did retake the area, so now we know. Here's the clip. And we can see right here some folks wandering around in the barbed wire. And here's New York, right there. Rail cars still in the rail yard and everything. You see them dropping bomblets. Boink. Oh! Oh! Oh!
Oh, it's red.
Oh, it's red like a commie! Commie!
It's the Red Scare.
Senator McCarthy, someone disagreed with you. Oh, yeah? Well, that's not that big of a deal. Yeah, but the problem is, he's a commie. Commie! Commie! You know, something like that. Get a House committee together now! We gotta put this guy under the ground or something.
Man, New York's looking rough these days.
Man, it really is. Jeez.
This is the Bronx.
Hey, isn't this where they conducted those search warrants? Like, oh, goodness. And Legit Facts just said, I just witnessed death. Man, welcome to the club. I've seen it about 60,000 times. You get kind of worn out from, like, getting any shock from it after that many times. So it kind of is what it is for us. Kind of is what it is for a lot of people. But yeah, it's pretty rough when you really think about it. You sit back and really ponder on it for a minute. But anyways, we did get to see some Ukrainian tanks moving to a staging area around the Severus direction. Check this out. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there. Really cool to see. And with that, we're now moving on into our next clip where we got to see Ukrainian troops retaking the town of Palestinivka in a BMP-2. Oh, God, it's that same song! I die tonight and come back alive. I eat hot dogs and hamburgers and fries, or something like that. It's some lyric that goes like that. But when you see the BMP laying down some fire while the Ukrainians dismount out of the back, they're hopping out of the back going, I'm about to burn a Russian in the hole, get him to surrender and send him to the Poles. There's something like that.
Damn. A lyricist up in here.
Man, really, man. I mean, for real. And also, I like the watermark here. It's like Disney Plus, but it's called Officer Plus. So I guess this is what officers get to see when they get the subscription.
Also, sidetrack real quick. I see everybody talking about the Starliner just touched down. Didn't it touch down without the astronauts on board, though? I think.
I don't know, Matthew. I haven't really been following that Boeing Starliner news. I feel like that's like one of the least priorities of Boeing. I feel like their main priority is not to collapse as a company. But I feel like that is one of their priorities down on the list somewhere, is to make sure that those two people don't end up getting stuck in space and eventually starving up there or something.
Yeah, as everybody said, no crew. So it was a win for Boeing. I guess they came back with the spaceship, but not a win for the mission, I guess.
Dude, everyone at Boeing Mission Control is like, yeah, we did it, high five. And then the guys up in the space station are like, it's day 900. We're still here. Like, no one has come to get us. Jeez. They're sending up a Falcon to go get him 2 months from now. Good Lord. I would hate to know that I'm just stuck somewhere with really nothing to do for the next 2 months in space of all places. It's got to be pretty lonely up there in space with only one other person around. You know, like that's got to be hell on earth after a while. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to hear the sounds of gunfire in this area as well around Pokrovsk. Just your average day in downtown Birmingham.
Саша, прием. Я здесь. Смотри, 2 человека готовы, и еще 2 с 5 собаками хотят. Что мне делать? 5 штук.
Но мы их никуда не денем. This man is spitting on the ground.
Пойдем со мной.
Man, he disrespecting it. Like, before he even sees the Russians.
Бабушка плачет, говорит, кота не поймаю, хоть 5 собак. Хуй знает.
And with that, that's the end of the clip right there, but still fairly interesting to see good to know that they were able to make sure to, record the sounds of the gunfire and the active battle that was going on not that far away in the town of Holostinivka. Moving on from that, and all the way down the line and into the area of Kherson, we did get to see that 2 Ukrainians tried to nick a car today. They ended up getting arrested. We also got to see that this police officer turned around so that way you could clearly see the police on his vest, written on it. So that way you knew the cops were arresting him, not just some random Joe Blow. Also, did that say Los Angeles on the back of his shirt?
Man, those gangs are everywhere.
Man, 369, damn she fine. But anyways, moving on from that.
Man, the Los Angeles gangs are going worldwide. They're in Ukraine now.
Man, that guy sat there. He tried to steal that car, and then he started getting arrested. He looked around. He said, "Hey, wait a minute. This isn't Los Angeles. Where am I?" Or something like that. Anyways, we got to see the 73rd blow.
He was just down the street from New York, though. He could have gone right down there.
Man, Los Angeles isn't down the street from New York. That's the whole other side of the country, you silly goose. But anyways, here's the clip of the Mr. S getting blown up. And it hit the back of the Mista. Thing immediately starts roaring into an inferno. Oh my goodness. It's like they're speeding up. I think the driver's panicking about now. Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, the driver's 100% panicking at this point. Oh, and now it's spewing out black smoke out of the engine bay. Not a good sign. We don't really know if the crew bailed out of this thing. I'm assuming the driver may have. But that's the end of that clip. That Mr. S is Mr. Gone. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip right there and up to Kyiv, where we got to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 926 of The Wire. And it doesn't look like it's on his website, so let me go to YouTube really quickly. I'm sure we can find something here. Excuse me, everyone. Hang on real tight for just a second. Just a quick little second here, because we have to go to the President of Ukraine's YouTube channel, where they may have it. And they do have it. They have it, dagnabbit, and we are going to be playing it right here, right now, for all of yous. All of yous, I tell you. And so with that, without further ado, here is, let me move this over to the main screen. I'm so sorry, everyone. This really throws me off kilter whenever this happens. Let me
Hey, this is that speech right here. I think that he said the thing about hitting the Kremlin in it.
Really?
I think so. I think this is what I watched earlier, I think.
Krasse. Well, on that note, everyone's about to see it to judge for themselves. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Long-lasting speech.
Доброго вечора, Італія. Дякую вам за підтримку нашої країни. І нашого народу. Ми цінуємо кожен крок на підтримку України, кожну дію та кожен вияв солідарності з боку наших партнерів по всьому світу, які допомагають нам відновити безпеку та наблизити мир. Українці хочуть, щоб ця війна закінчилась більше, ніж будь-хто у світі, але однозначно не через знищення їх державності, культури, міст. Російська агресія залишає нас без вибору, тільки боротися і захищати наші життя. Наші люди під постійною загрозою російських ракетних та дронових ударів кожної ночі та кожного дня. На щастя, у нас є системи ППО, також завдяки Італії. Але цього недостатньо, щоб забезпечити всю нашу територію та відбити кожну російську атаку. Лише з початку цього вересня, 1 вересня, Харків, масова ракетна атака, палац спорту та торгівельний центр знищені, 4 багатоповерхівки та дюжини магазинів пошкоджені. 50 людей поранено. 2 вересня. Знову те саме місто Харків, російські бомби. Це майже щоденна загроза, тому що ми досі не маємо дозволу від наших партнерів знищувати російські військові аеродроми. Ті, з яких російські літаки, які несуть ці бомби, злітають. 4 бомби було скинуто на Харків 2 вересня. 14 людей поранено. 3 вересня. Полтава. Ще одна ракетна атака. Вдарили по Інституту комунікацій. Знищили його повністю. А також лікарню, що знаходиться неподалік. 40 житлових будинків у цьому районі також пошкоджено. Загалом Росія вбила станом на сьогодні 55 людей, цивільних, під час цього удару, і 328 людей були поранені. Дехто отримав серйозні пошкодження, такі як ампутації та пошкодження внутрішніх органів. 4 вересня. Місто Львів, західна частина нашої країни. Прямий ракетний удар по місту, спрямований на звичайну цивільну інфраструктуру. Понад 100 житлових будинків були пошкоджені у ході цієї атаки, а також школа, 3 ліцеї, дитячий садок, 2 лікарні, 65 людей поранено під час удару і трагічно 7 з них загинули. Серед жертв Росія забрала життя 4 членів однієї сім'ї. Чоловік вижив, але його дружина та 3 доньки були вбиті у власному домі російською ракетою, що влучила прямо в будинок. Вчора і сьогодні стали також днями, коли російські ракети, ударні дрони та важкі авіаційні бомби не запускалися проти наших українських міст, проти наших сіл. Чого Путін хоче досягнути всім цим? Українці не хотіли його землі, ми не хотіли забирати будь-що в Росії. Це Путін хотів забрати нашу землю, і він окупував наші території. Він намагається знищити нашу державу та послідовно робив усе, щоб позбавити Україну її суверенітету, зруйнувати нашу економіку та змусити українців покинути Україну. Росія відкрито била на знищення всієї нашої енергетичної інфраструктури, намагаючись погрузити Україну в темряву. Чи можна прийняти це зло? Звісно, ні. І ось чому українці продовжують битися за їх життя, за їхніх дітей, за їх право жити на їх землі. Просто з нашими сім'ями, нашими дітьми та в безпеці в наших домах. Це все, що ми хочемо. Чи це забагато, за велике прохання для однієї держави? Путін шукає в найгірших режимах по всьому світу більше ракет, щоб мати змогу продовжити вбивати українських дітей. Ми намагаємося знайти системи ППО, щоб захистити себе. Росія використовує балістичні ракети з Пхеньяну.
We will wait for it to pass. Hopefully it's passed at this point. Has it passed? Will it pass? It has passed. And well, we have a short lasting lag. So with that, we're back to the speech.
Ударні дрони з Тегерану. Та значну кількість грошей із російської нафти, щоб продовжувати цю війну так довго, як можливо, та позбавити нашу країну життя. Але ми будуємо кожного дня укриття для шкіл та навіть підземні школи, щоб українські діти могли вчитися у безпеці. Попри все, ми переміщуємо українські підприємства, щоб економіка могла продовжувати функціонувати. І ми започатковуємо виробництво зброї під землею, щоб українські солдати могли захистити себе навіть коли постачання від наших партнерів затримуються. Ми розвинули наші власні дрони та ракети, і ми поступово переносимо цю війну назад до Росії, щоб Путін, зрештою, відчув тиск шукати лише однієї речі – миру. І я справді ціную те, що Італія робить все з нами, щоб втілити формулу миру, всі пункти, які є необхідними для миру в Україні. Щоб це був той мир, який мають всі країни, які зараз живуть в мирі. Україна не просить про щось більше, ніж те, що ваша країна або будь-яка інша країна вже має. Ми просто хочемо, щоб жоден батько у нашій державі не повинен був ховати свою дружину та дітей, тому що їх було вбито російською ракетою. Ми просто хочемо, щоб українські хлопці та дівчата ніколи знову не страждали, тому що вони не можуть допомогти своїм батькам, які знаходяться на територіях, окупованих Росією. Ми просто хочемо, щоб спадок поколінь українців не був знищений російськими бомбами. Україна заслуговує бути безпечною, і ми безперечно отримаємо безпеку для нашої незалежності та всіх наших людей, всіх наших дорогих дітей. Тут, на полях форуму, я зустрічатимуся з головою італійського уряду Джорджією Мелоні. Я також готуюся зустрітися з представниками італійського бізнесу, і я впевнений, що разом ми зможемо досягнути важливих, дуже важливих речей, щоб захистити життя в Україні, щоб посилити обидві наші країни, Україну та Італію, та відбудувати Україну після війни. Ми готуємо конференцію в Італії наступного року, яка буде сфокусована на відбудову України. Я справді хочу, щоб ваші компанії та ваші бізнеси, всі ваші найкращі ідеї працювали разом з нами, разом з українськими компаніями та українськими ідеями. Ми можемо додати більше сили, економічного та соціального зростання нашим державам. І я впевнений, що разом ми досягнемо цього. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає нам, всім, хто допомагає Україні. Я пишаюся нашими людьми. Україна вистоїть, і я запрошую всіх вас стояти з Україною та захищати те, що робить людей людьми. Дякую вам ще раз за запрошення, дякую вам за увагу. Дуже дякую. Слава Україні!
And Heroin Slava. Dang, that applause hit like a waterfall. But with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 926 of The Wire. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the second segment of the stream. About 10 minutes late, but we were 10 minutes late to the show. So, hey, what can we do? But it is the question segment, and we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all, which is always a fun thing, and we always love to do it. But before we get on into that, though, there is a question that we've asked all of y'all that y'all seem to have put a little bit of an input in, and it's very interesting to see what y'all have to say about this. So, Matthew, what are people talking about? What are they thinking, and what are you thinking?
All right, so that came off a little bit bad. I was just drinking some water, but anyways, they said, the poll says Intel reveals that Iran just sent hundreds of ballistic missiles to Russia, and what action should be taken by the West. 41% said sanction Iran even harder, and 32% said give Israel the green light to attack, and 19% said the USA should do some airstrikes. And on this one, I gotta say, to do airstrikes, that would be basically declaring war on Iran, because it would have to go over Iran's sky and their airspace and then hit stuff. So unless they're willing to go to war, the U.S. that is, with Iran directly and start that right now, the airstrikes probably aren't going to happen. Giving Israel the green light to attack, I'm not sure if Israel's really ready to start a direct war with Iran themselves. I think they're more acting defensively, so I doubt they need a green light at this point. And I think sanctioning Iran is probably all we really can do, and we should do that to the extreme and make Iran hurt. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, we should sanction Iran even harder. That would be my opinion. I think that would just be the appropriate thing to do at the point. Giving Israel the approval to attack Iran doesn't really make that much sense, because that's an entirely different kind of a situation going on. So you can't really sit there and go, oh yeah, you want to get involved in the Russian war in Ukraine? Well, then we're going to start off a war in the Middle East. That's kind of like a whole different thing that we have to work on there. So I would say, in regards with Iran getting involved in the Ukraine-Russian war, sanction them even harder, because Khamenei and his men were up there on their tiny post, and they were getting pounded by sanctions. And I would think that would be pounded, Matty, pounded. That may not be up to Iranian code, but it will be after we're done with it. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the next one.
All right, so moving out of that poll question right there, we're now moving on to our super chat questions once again. It's now time for the final question segment of the night. So we're getting to our super chats first, and then we're jumping into our live chats and the Morse code decoders of the stream. So up first, we have a $50 super chat from Charles Hazlitt, longtime channel legend. It goes without saying, and thank you very much, Charles, for that $50 support. He said, thank you both for your great work, and take a question from that chat.
Thank you so much, Charles Hazlitt, for always being here, always enjoying the great work, and helping this channel to keep on running. And so, I gotta say, thank you so much for the kind words. Thank you for always being an old guard and the channel legend. And also, we'll make sure to take a question from the chat in your honor, Charles Hazlitt. And so, with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question in honor of Charles Hazlitt is going to go to, let's see here, Elkus Sir, who said, if Ukraine starts an offensive later on, where do you think is the best front to start one?
Really, the only front I could see an offensive having a decent chance of succeeding right now would be in the Kupyansk front, if they wanted to try one. It seems to be less defended than others from what we can tell, and also there's a decent amount of flat land up there. So if there was any offensive that could be conducted at this point, really the only place I see it is that area. And that's the only reason I'm saying it, is because that's really the only area I think they have left. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my honest opinion. And thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat, Charles Hazlitt, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Rob McGuffin, who puts in a $28 donation. And then thank you very much, Rob, for that support. And let me do a little check-in real quick. Let me do a little looking. This is Rob's first ever super chat on a stream, by the way, on this live stream, that is, a long-lasting stream. And thank you very much, Rob, for that first-time ever support, $28. And also, no comment to address. But I see that it was put in Canadian, so Rob is the Canadian viewer. And we appreciate you, and we're glad to have you. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you for the support, Rob McGuffin, being one of our Canadian viewers. We actually have a decent amount of Canadian viewers. And I gotta say, we are entirely appreciative and very thankful that each and every one of y'all watch this channel, enjoy it, and are a part of the Lee Spring Army around the world. It's actually crazy to think about that the Lee Spring Army truly is worldwide. There's a Lee Spring Army flag in just about every single Western country in the world, which is pretty cool to think about. And I gotta say, a big thanks to you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here running this channel right now. And so, thank you once again. I hope I covered that and crossed our T's and dotted our Q's, or whatever they say. But still, thank you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again, Rob McGuffin.
Indeed. And our next one is going to go to GunFox61, who puts in a $20 donation. Hey! And thank you, GunFox, as well, for that support. He said, 1522, after 3 years, 42,000 miles, and the first circumnavigation of the world, the now Victoria sails back into the Spanish home port. In 1995, Cal Ripken Jr. breaks Lou Gehrig's record. And also a question from the chat, William McKinley, a bonus point here in the live chat, or the super chat. William McKinley shot in 1901.
Oh my God, McKinley! He's been shot! And then they named a mountain after him. And then they renamed that mountain to Mount Denali. Honestly though, I kind of liked it when it was called McKinley. Because when it had the name McKinley, at least you felt like there was some kind of danger with that mountain. I mean, it's a dangerous mountain. But beyond that, with McKinley, you felt like that mountain might pull out a gun and cap you or something, because that's what happened to McKinley. But beyond that, I gotta say, big thanks to you once again for support. And also, thank you for putting in a day in history, GunFox61. And it's true. 1522, after fail. Wait, hang on, let me do it correctly. Something like that. It's like,
you're like imitating that Australian guy that imitated the dog. He said there was vicious dogs, and they came around the yard and went.
wait, no. He's like, and they came running, and they went. Something like that. Wait a minute, let me go pull that guy up before I answer this question. Well, actually, before I talk about Ferdinand Michel, let me go pull up this guy. Australia.
Oh yeah, the lads were vicious and they came running around the yard.
Not allowed on the beaches or in the
Oh, we found it! It's here! Here we go. All right.
parks outside certain hours. So how is it that these two are roaming their neighbourhood, frightening the locals, and the council isn't stopping it?
There's a council.
Now, yesterday
that's a nasty
morning,
looking
I
dog.
came out into the front yard and the dogs were across the road. And as soon as they saw me, they came bounding over.
Damn.
And
And even his wife was scared.
Dude, the way he just went back to normal monologue.
And I just made it into the front door in
Dude, oh my goodness. Let's watch that again.
the front yard and the dogs were across the road. And as soon as they saw me, they came bounding over.
Damn. Man, if that guy's not on something, that guy is like the most animated character I've ever seen, like naturally.
Dude, this guy absolutely lost it for like 3 straight seconds. And then he just snapped back to it. Like, he didn't even act like he was like heightened or anything, or like really like tense after that, or really hyped up. No, he just went back to normally talking. This is like the craziest thing ever, man.
Out into the front yard and the dogs were across the road. And as soon as they saw me, they came bounding over.
Oh,
Yeah, and the wife knew it was coming. You saw that look on her face the whole time. She was like, "Oh, damn, you're gonna trigger him. He's gonna do it." Like, she was worried the whole time.
man, she's down there in her head. She's playing that Johnny Cash song. I hurt myself today to see if I still feel. It's like she's going through something down there. She's not even on the same plane. Oh man, oh my lord, dude! Imagine you getting in a fight with this guy and he just whips that out of the blue. You know, like you're just sitting there and you're like, "Hey, dude, this is my yard." And he's like, "Oh yeah," you'd be like, "Oh, hey, it's your yard, man. It's okay. Don't freak out." Like this guy is like, that was crazy. That was crazy. I gotta say. But anyways.
He's got that dog in him, literally.
Dude, he is the dog. Like he doesn't even have the dog in him. He is the dog. He's just in people clothes or in people's skin, doing people things. But beyond that, Ferdinand Magellan, I think, was the guy who started off that ship on its circumnavigation of the globe. And look at this picture. Picture goes hard. He would never live to see this portrait again. He died on the venture. I think he died down in the Patagonia area in South America, if I'm correct. But let's see here. What ship did he take? Let's see here. What is this ship? Let's see here.
The Magellan.
Yeah, sure. It's not that ship. Let's see. Enlisted in the fleet of 22 ships. But that's his early life. We need to know of the ship that he took, and they're not telling us why. Oh, yeah, here we go. Victoria. That is it. There is the ship right there, illustrated on a map.
Look at that. That's pretty crazy. They just put it right on the map.
Bro, they were wilding down there, man. They were firing off cannons.
Magellan wasn't playing around. And then later, when he got done sailing around, he started a clothing brand that got pretty popular with the hippies.
That's it, dude. People will be going around, why, yes, I wear the clothes of the explorer who died on his exploration because I like to have the explorer spirit. It's like, I don't think this is the guy. Like, so, how about naming it after one of the crew members that lived the whole voyage instead of dying, you know, like that guy did. But beyond that, I'm just kidding. Magellan was a pretty big visionary with the whole circumnavigation thing. Beyond that, still, pretty cool thing for a day in a history to be about is on today of all days, it actually ended up arriving back in port. But still, a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to take a look at a map showing the Victoria conducting a drive-by shooting of South America, which is nothing new for Rio de Janeiro, but at the time, it was pretty revolutionary. Anyways, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the... Oh, yeah, we got to get a question from the chat. What do we have from the chat, Matthew? Sponsored by GunFox61.
So this one's going to go to Avari Mendebratis, who says, "Did the Ukrainians lack sufficient grenades for aggressive trench clearing? I never saw them use grenades in recent trench footage."
They aren't really lacking grenades. It's just largely that a lot of their trench clearing ends up being with the rifle itself. And they usually either begin that with a grenade or they end it with a grenade. But I would say I haven't seen a lot of it myself, but usually they should have a lot of grenades. Grenades aren't really that difficult to produce. Really, anyone in the modern world, even with simple manufacturing equipment, can end up assembling and making effective grenades. So, as far as I know, they should have them, just because of their simplicity to produce. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. Because it is folks like you who helped make this thing possible, Gunfox621. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one's going to go to Heather Fitzgibbon, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Heather, for that support. And also, we got someone in the live chat over here who said, "Damn, this is nuts. This stream's crazy. I'll follow right now." So, okay, I'm glad to have you. But getting back to Heather's $20 super chat, she said, "For the new computer fund?" ?
Oh no, this little fella here, it's staying with me till the end. The reason, what happened with the technical difficulty thing, which I should have known better, is that Discord had some kind of a massive update that it was trying to get. Because what happened before the stream is that there was a decent amount of lag time in between me talking and Matthew hearing me, and then him responding and me hearing that. So it was like about 5 seconds or 6 seconds or so. And so Matthew said, "I'm going to restart my Discord." I said, "I am too." So I restarted my Discord. Keep in mind, y'all, I've been on Discord earlier today with a couple of people, and I had restarted it then. Like, it had been shut off, and I turned it back on, and there was no update. Soon as we're getting ready for a show, now there's an update. I'm like, this is great. So I was like, we'll wait. So I started waiting, and then everyone started getting a little bit antsy. So then I clicked start stream, and I knew that that was a bad idea because the Discord update is eating up bandwidth on the internet trying to install, and then I'm going to be trying to start up a live stream, which eats up pretty much all the bandwidth on a computer that's running a live stream, while at the same time it's trying to download some sort of a massive Discord update. So as soon as I did that, as soon as I clicked start streaming, the Discord update pretty much died in the water instantly, and then the live stream didn't go live either. It just ended up, it was technically started, but the bandwidth was so low, YouTube never even detected that it was started, and so I just told all of y'all it was upcoming for like 3 minutes. So then I had to shut down that, had to still wait for the Discord update to update, then get in a call, and then restart the stream, and then get it live. So that's what largely happened. It's not really a problem with the computer, it's a problem with trying to download too many things at the same time, which any computer would not really, trying to download multiple things at the same time. It's really trying to run multiple things at the same time that were requiring a lot of internet and a lot of bandwidth. That was really the problem, but that is kind of what it is. So, I thank you for the support, though, for a new computer. We will be putting that towards improving this little computer, because recently I actually put a whole new 2 terabyte hard drive into this, well, an SSD, not a hard drive, so 2 terabyte SSD, and it's really helped out a lot with clearing up some space and having some room to include fun things like the brand new Warhammer 40k Space Marines 2 game, which is actually pretty enjoyable, I have to say. I had played it a little bit last night with a friend. There was only one friend on. I know that Fuyuma, who I have friended on Steam, was actually playing Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 today, but it's actually a pretty fun game. I'm not really like a big, well, I kind of am a little bit into the Warhammer 40k lore side of things. It's very interesting. There's like a kind of like a fictional fantasy sci-fi world, but I'm not really that big into it. I feel like I'm bigger into trains than I am Warhammer 40k, but y'all know that that means there's probably like a load of rabbit holes I could go into on Warhammer lore if you're into that. But anyways, with that, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well, Heather Fitzgibbon LSA. And thank you once again for being an absolute legend and being here with us still to this day. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Panama Floyd, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Panama, for that support and being a longtime channel legend. Hey! And Panama says, "I love the success up north, but has it caused enough troop relocation to help Ukraine get their own land back out east? And yeah, every damn company tries to update at night because most clients aren't on at night."
And isn't that stupid? They should make it to where it's optional and you schedule updates. Like, they're like, hey, update coming, when do you want it? Like, it happens within like 24 hours of opening up the system, but you actually get to schedule when you get the update. I wish the infrastructure worked like that. I don't think it can, That's why they just end up rolling out like a block update. But still, well, it can work like that, though, because as long as you didn't open it up, it wasn't going to be. Anyways, moving on from that, though, I cannot stand it. And I thank you so much for pointing that out, Panama Floyd. And also, to answer your question about the whole Kursk incursion and did that really divert enough forces, maybe because the Pokrovsk offensive did stop. So maybe it stopped because the Ukrainians actually put up a hard defense, and the Russians don't have enough strategic reserves to push forward and then break through the Ukrainian defenses in that area. So I would have to say, I don't know. I mean, maybe we will see that it actually did divert enough troops. We will really only be able to tell that with time, and we haven't really had enough time to be able to tell yet, because once the Ukrainian offensive starts, if it makes a whole load of progress, we are probably going to say that an attribute that led to it getting a good amount of progress probably was the Kursk offensive, but we really don't know yet. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, Fell just said Superman said he won't do Warhammer movie. I thought it was a Warhammer show. Let me go pull that up. Warhammer TV series. Let's see here. Let's see. So apparently 8 months ago the contracts were signed, and someone said it might not happen about a month ago. But if the contracts were signed, it's going to happen at this point because you have a legally binding contract. Even if it sucks, they're going to put it out. Even if it technically blows, it will still go out. So there will be a season of that. Doesn't look to be a movie from what I could tell. It looks to be like a series. I'll be interested in seeing that because the Warhammer 40k world is pretty interesting in its own right. But I have seen some people coming in and trying, like, I cannot stand this. I'll just be entirely honest with y'all. I have my no politics rule here on the stream. I generally like to exercise the whole no politics thing as a way of life. Like, politics exists within a specific biosphere of the modern world, which is politics. Like, politics belongs in politics. It doesn't belong anywhere else. And I cannot stand it when other like groups, other genres have to pick like this political thing. Like I cannot stand it that when you're into like just as an example, because many of y'all will know that I am into guns. That's why we were trying to do a gun review channel. There's like this certain kind of like an identity that you have to like almost mold into in the gun world, or you're kind of considered an Auslander or an Outlander of a sort or something. And I find that so stupid because it's like, why can't I just be into guns without having to like pick up this entire political ideology to go with it? You know, I just like them and I think they're neat, and that's about it. Kind of the same with what people are trying to push everywhere. Like it's one way or the other. Like in the NFL, you'll see people pushing politics of some sort. In the gun world, you see people pushing politics of a sort. You know, and then you end up with Warhammer 40k, which is starting to get touched by that a little bit, and people are really starting to push to put like modern political issues into Warhammer 40k, and it's like just doesn't belong. It's like, first off, in the game, it's the 41st millennium. Like, imagine how far away from time that is to us. It's like, why in the world do we need to put modern political issues into a game that's set tens of thousands of years in the future? And not only that, it's supposed to be like hell on earth. It's supposed to be like the worst world. It's supposed to be like the worst timeline imaginable, like for everyone. Like, no one has a good life in Warhammer 40k. That's the whole point. So why in the world is there now going to be like a political agenda, you know, in Warhammer 40k, or why are people pushing for that when the whole thing about Warhammer 40k is that no one's trying to improve anyone's life? It just sucks for everyone, and that's kind of what it is. You know, like I don't really get that stuff. Like, politics should stay entirely 100% out of most everything, because because on top of that, do y'all want to hear about that stuff, like when y'all are trying to enjoy your free time? Like, when I'm enjoying my free time, you know, the last thing I want to hear about is the woes of the modern day. It's like there's a time and a place for that, but it's not every single time I'm trying to enjoy something fun. And I see someone saying there's no politics in Warhammer. There isn't, but there is a really significant group, and I've seen them recently, that is really pushing to try and include some sort of a political thing in Warhammer and make a statement. And it's like, it's not supposed to make a statement. It's just entertaining. It's a fictitious, entertaining world, and that's it. Like the stupid thing, like, I'll say this because I don't know. The stupid thing with like modern genre, like modern things, like I don't know, the Hunger Games or Harry Potter, like getting involved in politics. It's like, it's entertainment. It's not like, how in the hell can you even make this political? It's just supposed to be entertaining, you know, and then people try and make it political in one way or another, either the people who created it or the people who were into it. And it's like, that just doesn't make any sense. You're supposed to be enjoying it, and it's supposed to be escapism of a sort. It's not supposed to be, you know, like making a comment on real life scenarios one way or the other. But with that, I hope that does kind of like put my stance out there on that fairly well. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, Panama Floyd. I hope I did address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, I see people asking about the internet speeds out here. I've told everybody in the live chat, it's about 200 megabytes a second download on average, and about 10 Mbps upload on average from my experience. And someone said, huh, that sounds like fiber. Probably Spectrum. A good call. It is Spectrum, that is, because Spectrum is apparently known for not being that great when it comes to that kind of thing. But, you know, it's just so laggy. I just wish it wasn't. But it's always kind of been that way in our current location. Starlink, I see people recommending Starlink, by the way. We've looked into that, and I think at one point we were actually going to get that, but we had to stop trying to pursue that because we found out that it's not that fast in our current locations available here, but it's not really that fast. So we had to abandon the Starlink idea because it wasn't very reliable, at least in our location, for what we were told.
It's not that much better than dial-up, actually, in our area, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what we found out last time, so we had to skip it. So right now, we're waiting, you know, to basically get somewhere else where there's better internet, basically. That's what we're waiting for. But anyways, jumping here into our next super chat. Real quick, let me make sure I got this. I did. The next one here is going to go to GunFox61, once again, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, GunFox. They said, 1991, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are officially independent republics after more than half a century of Soviet rule, and September 30th, Fritz von Opel pilots the first rocket-powered aircraft, and the 1928 Okeechobee Hurricane.
Okeechobee. Man, that's one hell of a name. The Okeechobee Hurricane. Dude, that's before they started calling them stuff like Hurricane Daniel. You know, like where Daniel comes through and rips up the family house. And now, back then, it was like Hurricane Okeechobee or Cthulhu, the bringer of death, or something like that. But I like that's actually not that bad of a name for a hurricane. I would say that seems more appropriate than calling them like Susie or something like that. But beyond that, I would have to say that is a pretty cool, interesting day in history. Don't really have a lot to add on these, except for the Fritz von Opel. That's a pretty interesting name. Fritz von Opel. Was he German? He was. Oh my goodness, he was quintessential German. Matthew, I'm going to have to show you this guy, because this guy is German. Like, he's German. Like, would you imagine someone who would go, oh, hello there, how do you do, yeah? You know, it would be this guy. Like, let me get a better picture of him. But dang, all the pictures are tiny as hell.
Where's he at? I can't see.
There we go. There he is.
Oh, who's this again?
This is Fritz von Opel.
And wait a minute, Opel, like the car company?
I'm not sure if he's that Opel, but he's got the last name Opel.
Hold on just a second. Let me do a quick look. No way. That is the Opel. Let's see. Let me see if this is the same guy.
Wait a minute. This is the Opel that made the Opel Blitz, didn't they?
The Opel... What's the Opel Blitz?
It's the German World War II supply truck. Oh my god, it really is! It's that Opel!
Yeah, it's him. He's got the car company, too. This is that guy. He's that guy, pal. Also, let's see. I think they're involved with Vauxhall, I think, as well. I'm not really sure about that, but I know Opel, the car company right there, that's apparently the guy.
No way. He is the guy. He is that guy, pal. He's that guy. No way. And they have 37,000 employees, and their parent from 1929 to 2017 was nothing more than General Motors. Ooh yeah, America! Wait a minute. Hold up. Their parent company
Stellantis owns them?
What?
Stellantis owns Opel? Wait a minute. Whoa, hold up. Okay, if I know my car stuff very well, I try to keep track of who owns who, like the parent companies. Stellantis, I believe, owns the Chrysler Group, I think. like FCA or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. Let's see here.
Abarth, Alfa
They're-
Romeo, Chrysler, Citroen, Dodge, DS, Fiat, Jeep, Lancia, Maserati, Opel, Peugeot, Ram trucks, and Vauxhall.
Damn, like Stellantis has like racked up a huge portfolio of car brands. Like that's wild. Like they've really grown very large. But yeah, that's crazy. They got Opel too. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even know Stellantis was that big. I still thought it was like the Chrysler group. I didn't even know that they turned into Stellantis. But beyond that, that is crazy. This is the Opel guy. Like, that's actually kind of bizarre. Also, I like his safety bicycle here.
Oh yeah, that's crazy. It's got like a seat in the front.
Man, it's also got a whole, like, Willy Wonka kind of a logo going on. He's about to go, come with me, something like that. He's about to do some crazy crap like the original Willy Wonka did in the real movie, like the first movie, not the one with, like, the little...
drown somebody in the fudge lake again.
Yeah, dude, I like it when he was on the boat. He was like, there's no earthly way of knowing which direction we are going. And then he just messed with that one person, went, and then he went, or something like that. Like, that was the best part of the movie, really. But beyond that...
Dude was low-key a psychopath.
Dude, he was. Like, also, let's see, that Gene Wilder guy, man, he played Willy Wonka the best, man. Honestly, like, there's no way you can top him.
Yeah, that's true. It's good his last name was Wilder, because he was wilding in that one little movie.
Dude, honestly, though, this guy right here, the current CEO of Opel Group, for some reason, the smile that he gives off with his expression, it makes me feel like he should be the CEO of Volkswagen. Like, he's about to be like, we are going to lie on the emission reports this year. Something like that. Like, I don't know why. Huh?
Also, he's got the last name of a very well-known microphone company, Neumann, which is kind of odd. I wonder if he's involved with that as well, or was at some point.
I wonder. That's an interesting question. That's an interesting point, by the way. Oh, wait a minute, they have a factory in St. Petersburg. Whoa, hey, easy, Nelly.
That said GM Auto on it too. It's GM.
Yeah, look at that, GM Auto LLC. That's a limited liability corporation. But anyways, this is interesting. I will say that this is a incredibly interesting rabbit hole that we actually went down right here. Also, one more thing. One more little thing. One tiny little thing. This right here, the GmbH. Do you know what that means, Matthew?
That's the German version of incorporating a company.
I think so, or it's some sort of a thing where it's like manufacturing or something like that. Let me put that in, because I remember it being like a manufacturer or something like that. Stands for... Oh, yeah, it is a company with limited liability. Okay, cool. So that's like their version of an LLC.
Yes.
Do you see that on everything? Like in Germany, everything is a GmbH. And also,
I don't think Germany. I'm obviously not an expert in the German laws or anything. I just know that just by happenstance. But I think they have very limited like incorporation over there for their companies. So that's probably why everything is GmbH, is because that's probably one of the very few methods that actually allow companies to incorporate.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that with me, Matthew. I actually did not know that. And also, one other thing that I want to share with y'all is that while there is General Motors, there's also another group. Excuse me, everyone. General Electric. Not a lot of people talk about these people, but they do a lot. They do aerospace, energy, healthcare, and finance. And what's even crazier, if I remember correctly, if I remember right, and I should be remembering this correctly. Hang on, everyone. Oh, look at that. They make the gauges for railway locomotives. You can actually see the General Electric logo right over there. Isn't that cool?
Man, they said they took the name General Electric and they took the General real serious. Like they're into everything.
They're like, we do anything electric, and I mean anything. Also, if I'm correct, let me go pull this up. General Electric. Because if I remember, yeah, here we go. I'm right because I'm a winner. So let me pull this up over here. General Electric also produced a massive amount, and it's technically General Electric Transportation Systems. But beyond that, they produced an unbelievable sum of locomotives in America. Actually, some of the most famous ones in America in modern days was actually produced by General Electric, like the SG-10B, which is ungodly ugly.
Yeah, I don't like that thing, literally at all. Like, I really don't like that.
This thing makes me violent. This thing really makes me violent. Also, Mandy, they did make that little narrow gauge train that the Alaskan Railroad, the Yukon Railroad, uses.
That's pretty cool. Oh, what is up with that eagle or that bird on the front though? Like, that's kind of suspicious.
Man, that wards off all the Alaskans trying to strip this thing for copper. Squad! They're like,
damn,
you know,
man, put a straight on the Alaskans like that. I was thinking more like it reminded me of some German stuff or something.
Oh no, I'm just playing around with the Alaskan. By the way, don't take that personally, folks. I just had to try and make a joke there. But beyond that, I would have to say, also someone said earlier about that, because I just like pulled back on the show. Someone said, oh, look, if you committed on your jokes, you wouldn't believe how many people take jokes way too seriously. Like, I can make a joke about Alaska, and someone's going to come in here in like the next 5 minutes and be like, I'm an Alaskan, how dare you, you bastard. And so I have to make the disclaimer. Otherwise, people are going to be really pissed off about things that they shouldn't be pissed off about. Like, if a joke was made about Alabama, I wouldn't care. For some reason, I can make a joke about like anywhere in the world, and someone will be offended by that. But anyways, let me show y'all one. Matthew's going to know this one. I think it's one of his favorites. Oh, look, it's the U-boat series. Many railroad fans will know of the U-boat series because they all have the U in front of them. And so for some reason they got called the U-boats. But there were some really cool ones in this little group, like the U-28, which is pretty neat to me because of that tiny little front cab or front hood that they had. Like, it's itty-bitty. But let's see. I'm trying to find the specific one that Matthew will know, because I know he knows it. He will appreciate it when he sees it. And I know he will, because otherwise there will be issues. Here we go. The GE-44 or the GE-41.
That ugly bastard.
What, you like this thing, though?
I just wanted to say that. I actually like that because I have a model of it.
Actually, you have a model of the SD60. But they also...
what the hell ever. A train's a train. So if it's pulling, it's a train.
No, but they also have the GE-44 right here. This is like the one.
Man, I tell you what, that's it.
It's pretty cool. I mean, it is what it is. But anyways, with that, enough of a rabbit hole. Thank you so much once again for support, though, Gunflax61. That was one hell of a rabbit hole right there. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, in our next one here is going to go to Chargy, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Chargy, for that support as always. And they said, do you think the upcoming rainy season will benefit one side or the other in this war? And LLC.
Well, it depends on who's going to be trying to go on an offensive. If the Ukrainians are trying to go on an offensive, it will benefit the Russians. If it ends up that the Russians are going on an offensive, it will end up benefiting the Ukrainians. So it really just depends on who's going on offensive and who's on the defensive. Whoever's on the defensive is going to have a much easier time during that period. That will be the best answer I give. Kind of political, because I don't really know who's going on an offensive or who will still be going through an offensive during the Rasputitsa to be able to say who would be doing better and who would be doing worse. But with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also I saw 300 Ghost saying the live chat. He said, LOL, nobody can take a joke nowadays. Everybody is, and also this is not political, it's just this terminology. He said everybody's a snowflake right now in the new generation. You know what, here's what I gotta say. That if, sometimes people really can't take the jokes. Like, sometimes we'll say a joke on here, like, and mean it innocently, and people will take that to heart. Like, they will just go, like, berserk, like, oh my god, they're personally attacking me. And it's just, like, a couple of people here and there that, like, take it like that. But I'm like, geez, like, if that is enough to set somebody off, like, one, like, joke taken the wrong way or something that was meant, like, innocently with no, like, harm or ill intent behind it, imagine that person being put in our position of running a YouTube channel where you have literally bullets flying at you from every angle, literally every day, 24/7, literally criticizing everything from the way we talk, the way we look, what we say. As like, those people would snap if they were in our position. Like, it's good we're not like that, or we would have already gone berserk here on this stream. But just making the point, by the way. But you gotta be able to take a joke. Like, I don't understand. Like, people really can't take jokes these days anymore.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. That's why we have to end up doing the disclaimers. I wouldn't care about doing a disclaimer because, like, people from Alaska, I think generally people from Alaska would assume the joke about Alaskans running up and stripping the copper off of a train. I mean, that's kind of a little outlandish, right? Like, anyone's going to actually go and do that. But then there is, for some reason, someone out there somewhere who can't take jokes, and they end up making such a big scene and make such a big deal out of a joke that means nothing, that you end up having to make sure to say, well, hey, easy, it's just a joke, like, I'm just kidding, like, I don't actually hate Alaska, like, clearly you should know that, but I just gotta make that clear, because if you don't, there's gonna be, like, 2 people every single time that go absolutely haywire for no reason. Like another stupid thing that I've heard from people is just like, I'll say something like, I'll riff on Birmingham, which is where we're from, and then someone, I don't even know who the hell they are, they're like, hey, I'm from Birmingham, how dare you talk about this wonderful city? It's like, you're gonna get shot tomorrow. It's like, and not even, it's like, that's not even a threat, that's just a fact. Like, Birmingham has one of the highest, like murder rates in this country right now for a city. It's like, it's a dangerous place. It's like, that's a fact of life. If you make a joke about that, that's a joke. Like, if I run for president in 17 years in the future, and someone brings up the fact that I said that an Alaskan would strip the copper off of a train, I'm going to be like, it was a joke. Like, I'm trying to get people to laugh. Like, that's not an actual serious statement. Like, if someone is that stupid to believe something like that, that's on them. But beyond that, like, I just wish people could take jokes. And that's not being directed because, the word snowflake ended up taking like a political connotation years ago, but that's not directed at a specific group. That's really directed at anyone, anywhere, because we can end up making fun of city people and a certain group of city people will be offended. We can make fun of country people and a certain group of country people will be offended. Like, there's always a group out there that's going to be offended over everything. There's really pretty much a lot of people, if not everyone, has ended up becoming a snowflake. And you can really see that in full form. Like, for example, when people, like, stick their, like, sick is really the word, their whole communities on us on YouTube for one thing or another. Like, for example, like, when we sit there and imitate voices, like of political people or, anyone for that matter. It could be like James Earl Jones or Sam Elliott or whatever. And then we end up doing a voice of a YouTuber, and they're so fragile. And it's not even like a bad joke. It's literally just imitating their intro. And that's it. I mean, like, that's literally all it was. And that's enough to get them so offended they're going to sick their whole community on us because they can't handle an innocent joke. And it's like, then I just don't get. Because if someone imitated...
the first time... Go ahead.
If someone imitated me, like, I can't speak for Matthew. Matthew will probably agree with me here. But if someone imitated me, and it was just like, hello, everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news, and did something like that, I'd be like, that's pretty funny. I mean, like, that's pretty crazy that hell they even know of me to imitate me. That's pretty funny. I wouldn't take it personally, though. I wouldn't be like, everyone's got to go and attack this guy because I don't know what's up with him. Like some stupid stuff like that. But anyways, what were you about to say, Matthew?
I was about to say, the first time I've ever seen anything like that happening until, like, very recently. Also, a Calm Dragon, the news is over. If you want the news, you got to go back. This is the question segment right here. But anyway, the first time I remember seeing anything like that, you remember that Top Gear episode? Like, I saw Top Gear. Like, they've gotten flack forever, always a little bit. But you remember when they went down to, like, I think it was like the Falkland Islands or something like that, and they put like a bad number plate on one of the cars.
Yeah.
And it pissed the people off and it reminded them of the war or something. And all the people came running out of the woodwork to, like, basically stone the 3 out of the country. And they did. They ran them out of the country, and they had to, like, sneak them back out of the country and basically get stoned. That's like a real life representation of what it's like to be a YouTuber these days and try to please every crowd out there and try to, like, stay good with every crowd, because you can say, like, one wrong thing and it's like, oh my God, you just pissed off like thousands of people in one particular crowd or another.
It's not just that, though, Matthew. You don't even have to say anything anymore. It could just be doing something like, like that time that we brought on those people as guests onto the year's anniversary show, and one of them, which we will not mention, immediately got off of our show, stated that on their own channel they can't stop crying, like we inflicted trauma on them by having them on and plugging their channel for 30 minutes and treating them very nicely, although they were assholes. Well, that guy was an asshole. And then the next day after that, I guess he gets done sobbing all day, he goes on another person's show, speaks about being a guest on our show, and then bitches and moans that he didn't get enough time and we really disrespected him by giving him 30 minutes, although he literally knew that up front when we invited him on, because we told him that he was going to be on for a 30-minute segment and he agreed to that. Like, you don't even have to say anything for people to get pissed off or offended or whatever. You can literally do something like that, an act of kindness, just because our mom liked the guy's channel. Like, I didn't, like, I kind of liked the guy's channel. I thought it was okay at the time, but my mom really was just over the moon about this guy's channel. I was like, oh, have him on, that'd be so cool, he seems kind of cool. And we were like, yeah, sure, we'll have him on. And then we bring him on. He's a douche off air. He's a douche on air. He's a douche when we're getting him off. And then he complains about even being on our show, although we got him like 20,000 subscribers with that plug. It's like, you know, like, that was like the goofiest thing ever. And also, some people are going to say, I can't stand how he talks about subscribers. Like, they're just figures. But that's how they look at it. Like, I don't look at it that way. That's why I was like, cool, I would like to give him a plug and let people know about him. But then they make you look at it like you're giving away subs, because they'll just sit there and trash on you the next day and try and turn the very people that you plugged over to their channel against you. And then it's like, well, now I have to look at it that way, because y'all don't look at it as just people being nice and, you know, doing stuff like that. You know, you just get crapped on by people, you know, and just because you brought them on for 30 minutes and you told them that well in advance, like months before it even happened. It was like, yeah, it's a 30-minute segment. Yeah, I'm good with that. And then they come on and then they complain about it being 30 minutes. And then
after he got smart, I gotta always say this, it always just kills me every time. After he got smart with me, that one particular guest, and I was being very polite, like honestly very passive during that whole like stream that we did on camera, and he got smart with me because I asked him a question about, it was like, do you think Europe should step up and do more to support Ukraine since the U.S. has given so much aid? Like, I gave the monetary amounts. And I said, do you think you ought to step up and give some more aid in Europe? And he took it personal and he said, well, it's not a pissing contest. And I was like, well, that's rather rude to say that, but I'm just going to let it go and just take it on the chin and keep moving instead of confronting him about it. And then after he got off the stream, he blamed me for, he apparently spent the next 24 hours crying for whatever reason. He said apparently I was mean to him or something. I didn't even respond to what he said. And I was like, how was I mean? I didn't even respond. It's like, come on, man. It's like, I could have responded. If I guess if I'd have responded, you to start crying on air, which wouldn't have been good. But, you know, it's like, come on, man. It's like, that's kind of like that sort of like, I hate to use the word snowflake because it's got a political connotation to it, but kind of like that mindset that if someone says something that doesn't exactly line up with what you think, or it doesn't exactly fit your beliefs, then people either get crazily angry and want to attack you, or they go into a crying and sobbing fest and freak out. It's like, damn, it's like, it's just an opinion. It's like, come on.
Yeah, and also another thing is that after we plugged the guy, we let loads of people know about him, because I'll put this out there. When the guy got on our show, he had 47,000 subscribers at that point. I think at that, around then, we had like 120,000. So we were a good bit larger than this guy's channel. So we plugged the guy, and then over like the next week, he goes from 46,000 to about 70,000 subscribers. So he gets about like a 20,000 subscriber gain. And so we're assuming that that was largely from our channel and a lot of people watching our stream, because he was on it and we plugged him, you know, and he was there, you know, and then they ended up getting subscribers because of that. So then later on, we had been doxxed, we had been harassed by some guy, Hot Dog Man, as you all know. We end up getting involved in legal action with this guy. Hot Dog Man tries to lie about something that we did, that we didn't do, to draw this guy in. So we tell him, hey, by the way, just we're just letting you know, like, we don't want anyone in the rest of the community to get involved, because it's kind of like an unfortunate thing. But this guy is lying about us. We're having to do something about it. He was like, I'm not involved in that. And I'm like, no shit, Sherlock. It's like, we're letting you know what's going on so that way you're not just listening to this crap and believing it. So then when we have to take drastic action against this guy, because he keeps on doxing us and trying to have us harassed, you know, and we ended up copyright striking the guy because he kept on using our crap deliberately in violation of our copyright that we have on our stuff. Then this guy wants to come out that we had as a guest on our show and plugged and say that what we were doing was a dick move, but doxing us and threatening our lives and our safety is no big deal, no biggie at all. And that was what has pissed me off with that guy from here forward. That guy is one, and some of y'all will know who I'm talking about with these details. But that guy is 100% a piece of crap. He's not only a piece of crap, he ended up being a piece of crap to the hot dog man after he backed him up and supported him. Hot dog man literally said something just neutral to the guy, trying to let him know something, and the guy treated even him like an ass. I was like, this guy is just really a douche, like 100%. But anyways, with that, we've gone over this a lot, and we have to get to the rest of the questions. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Alan Pate, or I think it's Pate. But thank you very much, Alan, for that $20 support. Hey! And also, huge shout out to Jason Carney as well for the $20 support. And then we had a 10 from Keymaster, longtime channel legend. And thank you to Alan, Jason, and Keymaster for that support and helping to keep us running. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you, Alan Pate, Jason Carney, and Keymaster for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. The three of y'all didn't throw in comments, but the support means a lot and helps us to keep this channel running. And if it wasn't for the three of y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here tonight. And so a big thanks to y'all once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Dennis Gritzko, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Dennis, for that support as well. And thank you for supporting our work. He said, your comparison to Afghan-Russian war, it lasted 10 years before Russia decided to withdraw.
And I thank you for the support, Dennis. But once again, while it did last 10 years before they withdrew, their casualties were far lower. They only took 10,000 dead, the Soviets did, in Afghanistan over 10 years. The Russians have taken 10,000 dead about every week at this point in the war in Ukraine. So while it is true that that did last a while, and then it was a pretty protracted, well, it wasn't really a protracted war, it was actually a somewhat active war through most of it, even though it was low intensity, it still did not result in the kind of casualties and consumption that this current conventional war is right now. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jeff Scotty, who puts in a 20. And thank you, Jeff, as well, for that support. He said, you said Russia never made anything worthwhile. What about their nuclear weapons? And what about their missile systems? Those nuclear weapons they've got, that's not nothing special. And also, they couldn't even maintain them right because now they're rusty. And now they're really not that reliable, to be perfectly honest. Ours are getting old, too. But we've spent a lot of money on maintaining our nuclear weapons. And we do regular checks on them and things like that to try to keep them up to spec. But Russia really does not do that because they can barely manage to fund their military operations, much less keep the nuclear weapons in perfect operating shape. So, I don't know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say their missiles weren't really that much to talk about. Like Iskanders and stuff weren't really that advanced. The United States had comparable alternatives throughout most points. And Russian nuclear weapons were largely, at least in destructive ability, fairly comparable to ours. So it wasn't really that big of a thing. And also with nuclear weapons, it doesn't really matter if they're better or not. It just matters the fact that they can hit the target, because just hitting the target alone causes significant damage. So at that point, there's nothing really memorable there. It's just kind of a run-of-the-mill sort of a thing. But still, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. They said, please, AI Putin on a tiny horse and shirtless, of course. Enforcer, do you have Grok? Do you have them available?
Yes. Create image of Putin on, of a shirtless Putin. Shirtless Putin on a tiny horse. And so I'm going to do this off screen just in case if it came up with something a little bit bizarre. And so we're waiting. That is not a tiny horse, but that kind of counts. And I don't know why he's ripped, but there he is.
Huh, yeah, it's not a tiny horse. That's a big one.
That's not a tiny horse. Also, Putin doesn't have abs. Let's see. Create an image of a shirtless Putin on a small pony. All right, so what do we got here? What do we got here? Cook it. Cook it up. Oh, that kind of worked a little bit better.
A little bit. Also, why does he keep making Putin rip like that? That's kind of odd.
I don't know. It keeps making Putin ripped. Let's see. If we were to put in someone else, would it make them
Say
ripped?
a wimpy Putin.
You know what? No, create an image of Wimpy. Wimpy on a small pony. Let's see if it actually creates Wimpy. But not swole Wimpy, fat Wimpy, like Wimpy should be. What the hell? That's not even Wimpy.
What the hell?
That's a Pixar pony right there.
That's My Little Pony.
My Little Pony.
Yeah.
Man, create an image of Wimpy. I want Wimpy. Where is Wimpy? Create image of Wimpy.
This could be sketchy. Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. Hopefully it's nothing bad. Let me just get ready with the X button. That is not Wimpy. That is not Wimpy. That's some schmuck. That's not Wimpy. And also, why are his eyes like? Oh, that's his eyelid. Sorry. Anyways, create an image of Popeye. All right. It's got to know Popeye, right? Like it has to know Popeye. If it does not make Popeye, I'm gonna be pissed.
If it draws a restaurant, I'm about to lose it.
No way. It actually.
Oh,
what the hell's the little fella? What is that, dude? That's a homunculus. That is.
Enlarge this image.
What?
Man, it is Popeye. It is actually him. But what the hell? Is he in a war zone? He's in China.
Apparently he's in China, but what the hell is that little thing down there, dude? Is that like a rat-person hybrid? Is that legitimately, is that like a homunculus or something like that? Popeye's like, I made this creature out of an egg, something like that's like...
It looks, why does it look like he's standing in like an apocalyptic nuclear wasteland version of China with mutant creatures on the ground? And also, it looks like a soldier standing down there at the bottom. And also, what the hell is that in the window? A turret?
I don't know. I think Popeye laid waste to the People's Republic of China like a true American patriot. I took the communist Chinese and I ran them into the ground. Call that a Chinese dinner or something like that. They call it orange chicken or something. I don't know. But let's see here. Create an image of now we're on this spiel, man. We gotta come up with one more. Create an image of Popeye punching Putin. Why not? Why not? A real American patriot. Oh, look, they actually have it in all caps, too. And we'll put that in all caps just in case the AI really needs
to. Oh, but it adds that POW symbol to it, like, the POW.
Let's see if that is not Popeye. What the hell is this? And wait a minute, why is Putin punching Popeye? It's supposed to be the other way around.
Putin seems to be ripped, and he seems to be the one getting the first punches off here. I'm seeing a little bit of a trend.
I am seeing a little bit of a trend here. It's like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's contract where he can't lose in a movie. He can't ever be put in a losing position. Apparently, Brock can't put Putin in a losing position either. Also, are these like even natural muscles on Popeye? Like that looks like a...
Oh, man, that's roids.
Man, this is Liver King right here. Liver King versus Putin. Popeye's about to be out here going, I don't get my strength from raw spinach. I get it from bull testicles or something like that. Oh, man. But anyways, moving on from that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping the show to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Live Laugh Toaster Bath, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much for that support as well, Live Laugh Toaster. They said, you guys stink. Thank you. They said, so I better support the channel. Take one from the chat in LSA.
Oh, that was a good one. but anyways, we will make sure to take one from the chat. Your honor, Live Laugh Toaster Bath, legend of the channel. And, of course, long live Lee Spring Army. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Jordan, who says, should the United States take Russia while they are down if Moscow falls?
Wait a minute. Reread that one again.
They said, should the U.S. take Russia while they're down if Moscow falls?
No. That's a bad idea. Like, no, absolutely not. And so I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Khan, who puts in a $10 donation. Khan as well put out support. And they said in the Russian casualty losses and the special equipment losses, specifically the Russian Bobcat skid steer loaders, could you please show some pictures and explain the importance of Bobcat losses? See, Khan, here's the thing. they're actually not that important. Out of all the stuff on the chart, the Bobcats, and they're really honestly not even Bobcats, it's special equipment. It can mean like bridge laying equipment and stuff like that. It can mean anything, not just Bobcats, not the animal either like that. Honestly, it's just something that we joke about. That's probably the least important thing on the chart. So it's really just an inside channel joke. But there's an actual Bobcat. This is what I obsess over. I love that. Hydraulics, pneumatics, diesel smell, I love it. But Enforcer, what say you?
The answer to your question, Bobcats are not important, Con. Bobcats are a joke on this channel because we use the Kyiv Independence casualty report right here. And on their casualty report, their little icon for the special equipment vehicles is that of a Bobcat skid steer. So way back in the day, hundreds of days ago, about a year and a half ago probably, we looked at that and we went, look, dude, they're losing Bobcats. And then Matthew said, well, where are they losing Bobcats? And I said, oh, no, they're not really Bobcats. It's just an amalgamation of anything and everything that's a special equipment system. And so from then on, it kind of stuck as the joke that these were all Bobcats. None of them really are Bobcats. The Russians don't actually use Bobcats in a military setting much at all. And if they do, it's inside of Russia, not inside of Ukraine most times. But from what we know, most of the special equipment vehicles are brims. They're Urals with excavators mounted onto the back of them on a swiveling turret, stuff like that. So they're not Bobcats at all. They're not actually significant to the war. It's just an inside joke because of the little icon on the casualty report being a Bobcat skid steer when representing the special equipment category. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I think you want to give a support, Con, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Adam McLean, longtime channel legend, who puts in a 10 as well and says everything pro-Russian is nonsense.
I would agree. Now, I would say that largely doesn't give the U.S. government the right to censor people who are saying that stuff, but I think it's largely stupid. Most of them have pretty bad talking points, and most of them just kind of live in la-la land, like saying things like, Russia is better than America. It's like, oh yeah? Why don't you live there then? It's like, why don't they run the world? If they're better off than America, they ought to be running the world, not us, right? Like, you know, it's like, let's work with common sense here. But yeah, most of everything they say, it's absolute malarkey. Like, for example, the Russians are traditional. No, they're not. Like, if you actually look at things, Russia has like the worst of everything. Like they're like for some reason people believe, I don't know, some schmucks out there eat up the idea that Russia's like this traditional country. It's like there's nothing traditional in that country, like at all. It's like just go and Google that. Like go ask, is Russia a traditional country? No, the answer is very easily no, and the Russians even admit that. But with that, well, when they're not trying to push propaganda, it's largely admitted in Russian statistics gathering and stuff like that they're not traditional, but they like to try and push that for propaganda reasons for some stupid point. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I think it wants to give us support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ambi Pambi, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Ambi, for that support. They said, when does a Cub Scout become a Boy Scout? They said, wait, when he eats his first brownie.
I don't get it, Matthew. What does it mean?
I don't understand. Is this like an inside joke of the Boy Scouts?
I don't know. I really don't know. We never got to be in the Boy Scouts. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I don't get the joke, but I have a feeling it would be funny if I knew it. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and okay. I see here. I see here what they did. Okay, I understand now. Oh boy. But anyways, moving on to our next one here, we have a $10 super chat from Ted DeWitt, and thank you very much, Ted, for that support. And they said, I believe the election is the real reason why the lines aren't being extended for long-range strikes, and I appreciate the work that you do.
And thank you so much once again for the support and appreciating and supporting the work that we do, because it is folks like you who support this channel and help us to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Yes, I see you know your sneaky judo well, Ambi-Pambi. Got us good down. That was an interesting one. But anyways, moving on here to our next one, we have a $10 super chat from William P. And thank you, William, for that support as well. He said, do you think that destabilizing Russia would be a disaster like Iraq was when the invasion ended and we disbanded the Iraqi military?
It wouldn't be that much of a disaster if there was an actual central Russian government to take control immediately. The problem was that when we disbanded the Iraqi military, there wasn't really a problem in that. There was a problem in we didn't have enough occupation forces inside of Iraq to be able to hold down military armories and sites like that. Inside of Iraq. And so the problem was that when we disbanded them, we said, okay, you go do whatever you want. And the Fedayeen took that literally, and then they went into the armories that weren't protected or guarded by U.S. soldiers. They stole a whole bunch of weapons, and then they started to use those to mount an insurgency against the U.S. occupation. So as long as something like that didn't happen, as long as Russia was held down well and some sort of civil authority or some sort of control was managed or held, that wouldn't devolve into a really bad situation like that. It would generally be controlled. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Lazarus7049, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you, Lazarus, as well, for the support. And they said thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for support, Lazarus7049, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for enjoying this channel and helping it to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got another one from Gunfox61, who puts in a 10 and says, Enforcer, they are on ISS, which is fully stocked. And also there are 8 other Russian and NASA personnel. Roro. So they are fine and helping out each other with science stuff. And also cool aircraft, NASA WB-57.
Well, I'm sure they're fine up there. I'm sure of it. And still, it isn't good to know that they're just kind of stuck up there, because it's kind of a point of national pride. But if you do want to see something cool, this is a modified NASA Canberra.
Huh.
Kind of whack, isn't it?
A little bit.
You want to see what this thing really was based off of to get a little bit of a better idea? It was based off of this.
That looks like a javelin.
A javelin?
I've made that up.
It's actually close to being a de Havilland, but no. It is it is a NASA Canberra. Pretty cool, actually. And I thank you for sharing that with us, because we would like to know that our astronauts are safe in space. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running.
All right. And also, Gunfox said 2 Russian and 6 NASA personnel. Okay, that's better numbers. I like those numbers better.
I like those odds.
I thought it was more Russians than the NASA, but it's good to know the Russians are outnumbered. Not that anything might go wrong or anything like that. Typically, the Russian scientists are pretty calm and chill. They're usually not like in Call of Duty where they rip you apart and try to shoot you in the space station. They're usually not like that. And I don't think these are either in real life. But anyways, jumping into our next one here, we have a $10 super chat from William P. once again. He said, have you ever heard the Emu War? Your Aussie voices made me think of it. And spoiler, the emus won.
Yes, I have heard of the Emu War, and that's when the Australian government tried to go after the pests in which the emus are, and they ended up losing. It was largely because of how they went about it that they ended up losing, but they did end up losing. It's a pretty interesting story, and I got to thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Teslands, who puts in a 10 and says, what's the last you heard about the actions of the International Legion?
The International Legion is currently fighting around the Severonsky Forest area, and that's about the last I heard of them, and that was about 2.5 weeks ago. And so with that, I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well, Teslans. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to David Walter, who puts in a 10. And David says, what are your thoughts on NATO member Turkey protest against U.S. involvement? An allied protest against other NATO countries are important to listen to, but is it a mid-long-term problem to address?
I would say, let's see. I would say Turkey is a rogue country if you're speaking about what's going on in Turkey with the Turkish nationalists. Turkey is a rogue country in NATO at this point. We shouldn't really, I believe that it should be deprioritized to have Turkish relationships, a Turkish relation here in America. They're clearly a country that is almost long gone at this point from the kind of country that we knew when we made them an ally. And so I would say I wouldn't really concern myself with it too much, and we could just end up throwing them out. Because as long as we end up controlling the Strait of Gibraltar, which we control, and we also control the Suez Canal, which we largely control. The Russians really have nowhere to go. Even if the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles were open to them somehow, some way, they're still stuck in the Mediterranean, and we would end up obliterating their asses in the Mediterranean because the entire thing is surrounded largely by NATO countries to the north, and so that means that we would be able to project air power literally anywhere and everywhere and blow them to pieces with anti-ship missiles literally anywhere and everywhere in the Mediterranean. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and I think it wants to give us support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Big Daddy J, who puts in a 5 and says, Enforcer Matt, is Nightbot a real person? And please dial it down, as I was warned for cheering LOC, LOL. And Big Daddy, Nightbot, that's a bot. That's not a real person. That's a bot. It's designed to keep the chat in order. Sometimes he gets things wrong, sometimes he gets things right. Sometimes it gets cantankerous, and sometimes it's calm. But tonight, it was actually somewhat calm, because sometimes it goes berserk. But let's see. And also, we can't control it. It does its own thing whenever it wants to. And we're just glad to have it at this point, because a good bot is a valuable thing. And that bot's probably the most civil. But I hope that addresses it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And yes, I largely have to agree with Matthew. We don't really get to control the Nightbot much, so just pray that it doesn't get you, because we don't really have much control over the thing. It kind of does what it does. But still, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5 and says, take a live chat question.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and we will. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to, let's see, this one goes to, No Same, who says, could this be a means to block incoming supply routes to Moscow in the event of a Ukrainian siege on Moscow?
The whole siege on Moscow without the siege on Moscow thing. Let's see here. Here we go. Could this be a means to block incoming supply routes to Moscow in the event of a Ukrainian siege on Moscow? I would doubt that, because they are incredibly far away from Moscow right now, and so a siege wouldn't be happening soon enough for that to be a preparatory measure. And so I'd highly doubt it. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Big Daddy J once again, who puts in a 5 and says, pontoon bridges should be removed, Enforcer Matt, when the orcs are present. I say smack those things and take them out whenever they see them. If they have the chance to hit it with the orcs there or not, I say take it out. It's a military target. Feel free to fire at will and take those damn bridges out, because they took out all the like stationary bridges in that general area that we're talking about. But the pontoon bridges, they keep popping up occasionally, and they need to be smashed. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, thank you for the support, Big Daddy J. I would agree with Matthew. Hit him whenever. Even if Russians aren't on him, hit him. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, Ted DeWitt puts in a 5, and he says, I apologize. I still appreciate your work. I'm not sure what he's apologizing for, but thank you. We accept.
Oh, well, thank you for the support, Ted. Apology accepted. I don't know what that's being put in for, but still, thank you for appreciating the work and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Punished FOXO, who puts in a 5 and says, the Soviet Union made plenty of discoveries, but they usually lack the budgets to fully take advantage of them, and doomed to fail from the start.
And I would say, thank you for the support, Punished FOXO. And I would have to say, the Soviet Union really didn't come up with a lot of advantages or discoveries. They really didn't. Usually they were behind the curve, and they were usually just trying to prove that they were as good as everyone else. Because you have to remember that the Soviet Union was the successor of the Russian Empire, and the Russian Empire was never known historically for being advanced or even on par. They were always known for being backwater and archaic, and every single step of the way, technologically, everything. Maybe the only thing I can think of that the Russian Empire actually made that was worth anything was the first early version of a gas mask, but that was literally just a rag people pissed on and then they breathe through it. So is that really an innovation or not? But then also they ended up coming up with, I think, the first carbon filter for a gas mask, so that kind of counts for something. But beyond that, they didn't really make a lot. Like, they made, at one point, the biggest plane in the world. They made the biggest train in the world by weight. They did a lot, but it wasn't good. Like, it wasn't good at all. Like, the AA-20, I think it was called. And let me go to the locomotive. This thing they made it just for the fact they could try and make a massive locomotive. Like, look how big that thing is. That is a person right there. This thing was a monstrosity. It was insane. It was so big, it literally tore apart the rails it rode on. And the only reason they built this thing, well, so that way they could go, look at this. Wicked capitalists can't build a train as big. When in reality, they literally didn't think anything else out about it. They failed at computers. They failed at producing really good aircraft. They failed at producing anything in the modern world that would actually count. They've never made innovations in steel production. And generally, they never had any reason to improve or adapt because keeping the status quo for the Soviet Union, a centrally planned economy, was so much easier than actually trying to innovate and adapt. Because in America, however much people like the kind of competition capitalism brings about or not, it's probably one of the biggest innovators for progress and invention, because it actually gives some form of a natural competition. In the Soviet Union, where there really wasn't any natural competition, the only reason that they would ever try and innovate or improve was because the West was innovating and improving, and they were trying to keep up with the Joneses, pretty much. So that would kind of be my answer. I'd have to disagree. I don't think the Soviet Union ever made anything of note or real value. It was just garbage, in my opinion. So with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to GunFox61, who puts in a 5. And they said, breaking news, White Sands, New Mexico, Starliner safety touchdown after 93 days in space up at the ISS.
Thank you for the support, GunFox61, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for sharing that fact with us. We actually talked about that a little bit earlier on stream. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Wes Van Landingham, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Wes, for that support. I think that's your first ever support as well. And we appreciate it. And of course, it helps keep us running. So with that, we're moving on to our next one, which goes to Jaya Turner, who also puts in a 5. And says, Hot Dog Man calls us enforcers dogs. Fine by me. That sounds hard AF. And also a salute to all my fellow enforcer dogs. Long live the LSA.
That does kind of go hard, though. I think enforcers hellhounds would be even better. I think we could improve on that a little bit. But that actually kind of does go hard, though. Enforcers dogs. Like I don't know. For some reason, that actually kind of is like devil dog, like the Marines get called a little bit. But that's not bad. That's not bad. Tell them to improve it a little bit more, and maybe we'll be able to streamline that and put it into service. Apparently, though, the guy's still talking smack. I thought the guy had stopped talking smack for about 2 months now. But you know that was always going to be short-lived because the crack fiend must return back to his natural habits as he does. A tweaker of the internet, a tweaker of the servers, if you want to call it that. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Matthew Foxtrot, who puts in a 5 and says, what do you think about a post-war Russia? I see a NATO puppet state or something similar.
I don't see a NATO puppet state, but I certainly see a much more demure and weakened Russia that probably would fall within the Chinese sphere, to be entirely honest. I don't ever see them becoming a NATO puppet. I see them going more towards the Chinese. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Matthew Foxtrot once again. He said, sidebar, but I'm looking at new trucks, Silverado or Tacoma. Well, two big differences. Silverado full-size truck, Tacoma is the mid-size truck. The Tundra is the full-size Toyota. If you're going for reliability, you go with the Tacoma. If you're going for the biggest truck on the block because you live in the South and you got to have it, the Silverado is the way to go. Me personally, I'd go to the Tacoma. It's smaller, but it's a little bit more handy, and it's a little bit more reliable, and it's not a Chevrolet. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would go with the Tacoma. I'm just generally for smaller pickup trucks because it kind of calls back to the day when pickup trucks were more about their utility than just raw size. So I would pick the Tacoma, in my opinion. That they could start a whole rabbit hole on its own. We're really over time though, so I can't really get into it too much. But smaller pickups, if they have the same bed space, and that's really what you're caring about, is how much bed space they have. If it's a mid-size pickup and it has the same bed space as a Silverado, get the Tacoma, because it's going to be a lot easier to drive. It's going to be a lot more enjoyable to actually have. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Punished FOXO once again, who puts in a $3 donation. And thank you very much once again for that support. And also we have a 2 from Teslands, as well as a 2 from VC Slim. Huge shout out to Punished, Teslands, and VC Slim. Thank y'all very much for that support as well. Because, of course, like we say, it keeps the coffee brewing, it keeps the lights on, and it keeps us doing the stream. But with that, thank you very much. And we also have a 2 from Sean Heaton, who said, buy a car.
And and so with that, thank you so much for supporting Sean Eaton and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Punished FOXO once again, who puts in another 2. It says, Jamaica stands with Ukraine.
And thank you for the support. And that's cool to know that Jamaica does stand with Ukraine. Pretty cool to know that we actually have Jamaican viewers all the way from Jamaica right there. And that's
Thank
actually,
you, Mon.
what the hell? Anyways, thank you so much for your support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, Sarge, who puts in a 2. It says, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
And that is an order from LSA Sergeant Figment, an absolute channel legend. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. With that, we are on to the final question of the night. Actually, the final super chat of the night before we get on to the live chats.
And this one goes to Bruce Lee. He's kicking his way in and puts in a 2. And says, upgraded profile pic. It goes hard. LSA. And he took that picture of the military marmot that we made the other night on that Grok thing. It goes hard. It goes hard. And thank you very much, Bruce, for that support.
And it does go hard. The marmot with the franking gun. But still, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I love the new profile picture. It is incredibly good. And with that, we've reached the final super chat of this night. And we are about to be moving on into the question segment. We're going to be addressing the Morse code decoders in 3 live chat questions. And then we're going to be rounding out this night's stream due to time constraints. And so with that, we are on to the Morse code. What do we got, Matthew?
So the Morse code decoders tonight were Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Benu, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, Her Royal Fluffiness, and also a newcomer to the Morse code, Arabelle Garbo. And they said the Morse for tonight says from the LSA Signal Corps, Russia is losing ground in Ukraine and Russia, and it looks like the Ukrainians are rushing to win. LLT, LSA.
And there's the sound of money! And y'all got that dead on nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all, incredibly, quite indubiously, for getting that Morse code message correct. It's pretty crazy to know y'all have gotten that correct 926 days, and probably will be getting it correct for another several thousand more days, because even if the war ends, this channel will probably keep on running. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Bobo Vasquez, who says, I have read articles about how the U.S. Navy might need to pull back ships because the recruiting is poor. And your thoughts?
Yeah, the recruiting is poor. Some people are saying, there's a load of reasons people say recruiting is poor. I would honestly have to say it really boils down to, the best way I can describe it is inadequate management. In the armed forces. I hate to say that because, everyone doesn't like to really kind of point out the issues with the armed forces. Some people are trying to really go hard on the recruitment ads. I feel like the recruitment ads have absolutely nothing to do with it. I feel like it's every single person in every single family these days, like your uncle or your dad or, someone or like I knew, just people and also my family. And every single one of them would say, it sucks, do not join. Every single one of them would say that. And that's what's really starting to drive recruitment numbers down, is that a lot of people's time in the service was so bad that when they actually tell their family personally, in private, they always say, do not join the military, do anything else but join the military. They treat you like garbage when you're in. And hell, a lot of my friends right now also say that as well. And it's not a good look because, and that's really the issue. That's really where it comes down to, because you could have the worst recruitment ads and people would still be signing up to go join the military if they heard that it paid well and you were treated pretty decently. People would still be joining. But you don't hear that from people who actually were in. They say, it sucked, it was terrible, there was a load of problems, they treat you like garbage, you're pretty much replaceable, don't join, don't do it. And so a lot of people don't. So that's really the issue, if anything, and that's probably why they're having to recall some of these ships and pull them out of service, at least temporarily, or man them with skeleton crews in harbor, is because they're just not bringing in enough people. They got to turn that around somehow. They got to improve the management, really, and that would really bring in a lot more people. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And Matthew, are we on to the second to last question of the night?
And this is the second to last question of the night, which goes to Anonymous, who says, how close do you think the West has a man in the Kremlin? And we're not getting all the information. Anonymous, I would answer that question with this. I think we have a person very close in the Kremlin, but even at that, they're not within, like, let's say, within touching distance of Putin, because Putin is a spy by trade, and he's notorious for blocking himself off, even from his trusted associates. He even is sort of leery of them. He's very paranoid, and he sort of stays off to his own. That's why you've heard reports of him sort of like locking himself away in his office and things like that, and also allegedly using body doubles as well, because he's very paranoid. And we have someone close that can probably give us information, but not to do anything, if that's the question. But we can get information out of there. But, Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to agree with that completely. He's a very paranoid person, so while we have people pretty much all the way up to Putin that are telling us stuff, they're never going to be able to get to him. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Shatten Mork, who says, how likely and how politically feasible do you think about NATO countries training Ukrainian soldiers like the Polish army's doing?
I feel like that's a really good thing because it instills a decent amount of training and also hopefully some tradition from Western militaries that are trained in a Western style that will hopefully improve their fighting capabilities in Ukraine. That's really a good thing for Ukraine because the only thing they have to go off of in terms of military tradition and culture is the old the old conscript Niki kind of a thing that they had, or the well, yeah, that's kind of what it was called. And that's not really a good thing to go off of. And so while they're trying to morph out of that on their own, it's a lot better to have soldiers go abroad and learn from other militaries and then bring back that culture and tradition with them. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And a big shout out to Sandra, who's earning a 20-pound super chat and said, holiday fund. And thank you for the holiday
Let's go!
Fund. Hey, let's go, baby! And thank you so much for supporting the holiday fund, because it is folks like you who helped to make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. I want to thank everyone who's watched tonight, every single one of y'all. It was once again an incredible night, and we're so honored to know that we were able to share the news with each and every one of y'all. And so with that, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for another great stream tonight, of course, and be sure to join us tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next night of War News stream. And also, we didn't have another short war video today. That's because the news is coming out really late these days, and we usually only have enough news just to cover on the stream at night. So hopefully, we'll have a short war video maybe tomorrow. We need to get started back on that once again. But of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Ooh.